Step
in and around wherever you like. Maybe I should write them stuff. I don't know if they're always here yet. That always gets sugar. They're always here. Okay. They're always here. That's always a volunteering.
There you go. No. That's it.
Okay, I got deadline, but then she got to talk for
Speak for us. Yeah. And make it look super amateurish. I know. It's where that term comes from. No. So. Yeah, it's a lot of stuff. It's like, either way, at least it's not as long.
That might be the right time. I can remember his name. I said to come see Presto. Perfect. Yeah, I just remember the name of
Okay. Is it like
only 104? Yeah, we'll get it. Yeah, we got a bit of time still. A little bit. Getting water right now.
Welcome, everyone. Welcome to meeting number 2026 of the Toronto Transit Commission. I'll call the meeting to order. We do have quorum. Any declarations of interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act? There are none. We will move to approving the previous meeting minutes that was held on May 8th, moved by Commissioner Campbell. All in favor of the approval of those minutes? No opposed. That carries. We've got a pretty lengthy agenda, so we'll go do an agenda run through and see which items need to be held or not. I will hold numbers 1, CEO report, and number 2, the ACAT minutes, and 3, which is a presentation. Item number 4, can I have a motion to approve the actions taken in camera? Commissioner Campbell, all those in favor? That carries. Item number 5, acquisition of additional lands for subway yard. A motion to approve the actions taken in camera by Commissioner Campbell. All those in favor? No opposed, that carries. Item number 6, Scarborough Subway Extension Tunnel and Emergency Exits Property Acquisition. Recorded vote asked for by Commissioner Fragedakis. All in favor of the actions taken in camera. Commissioners DeBaremaker, De Laurentiis, Heisey, Cole, Lalonde, Campbell. Opposed, Commissioner Fragedakis. Item number 7, we have a deputant. That is the Scarborough Subway Extension MOU with Scarborough and Rouge Hospital. So we'll hold that. Item number 8, the AG's Auditor General's Report Managing Telecommunication Contracts and Payments. Move staff recommendation by Commissioner Lalonde. All those in favor? That carries. Auditor General's Report on the outstanding audit recommendations. Will be any questions on that? So Commissioner Fragedakis is moving staff recommendation. All those in favor? That carries. Item number 10 is PricewaterhouseCoopers audit results for our year-end financial statements. Moved by Commissioner Lalonde. All those in favor? No opposed. That carries. Item number 11, the draft consolidated financial statements. Held by Commissioner Campbell.
Which one, number
11 was, yes. And item number 12 was a financial update for the period ending April 7, 2018. Hold. 13, we have deputants. 14, we also have one. 15 is the Toronto Parking Authority TTC commuter parking item. Staff recommendations moved by Commissioner De Laurentiis. All those in favor? Okay. 16, I believe we've got a deputant and maybe an additional one. Item 17, track maintenance contract. Commissioner Fragedakis is moving the staff recommendations. All those in favor? That carries. Item number 18, supply of Microsoft software. Any questions of staff? No? The staff recommendations moved by Commissioner DeBaremaker. All those in favor? That carries, none opposed. Item number 19, supply of various safety products. The staff recommendation is moved by Commissioner Fragedakis. All those in favor? No opposed, that carries. Number 20, we have a deputant. 21, easier access, stage 3, award of contracts. This is an information item. Would be a motion to receive. Okay. Motion to receive by Commissioner Fragedakis. All those in favor? That carries. Item number 22, TTC Pension Fund Society 2017 Annual Report. Motion to receive from Commissioner Lalonde. All those in favor? No opposed. That carries. Outstanding board items. I'll hold that. A notice of motion establishing the TTC Random Acts of Kindness Awards. Moved by Commissioner Mihevik and seconded by Commissioner DeBaremaker. There are no deputants on this item, so I'll refer this to staff for consideration. All those in favor?
Thank you, that's very kind.
I'm trying. I put that one on.
You'll be considered for an award.
Do I get an award for that? Wow. Low bar. A second notice of motion, we do have a deputant on. That's item number 25, which is bus routes on local roads. Item number 26 is the new streetcar program request for information that was issued for the 60 additional streetcars. Hold that. Item number 27, we have a DEP, and item number 28, we'll move the action. I'll move a motion to adopt the actions taken in camera. All those in favor? Okay, so just for everyone who's following along, that leaves us with items number 1, 2, 3, 7, 11, 12, 13, 14, 16, 20, 23, 25, 26, and 27. Okay, we'll move to our CEO for the CEO's report for June, and I will hand it over to him to give us a brief introduction.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
Sorry, if I may just ask to vary the procedure under item number 1 before Rick speaks. I wanted to, if I could.
Yeah, please, go ahead.
I wanted to make a presentation to the CEO and to you as the chair. I was at the medal reveal for the Scotiabank Toronto Waterfront Marathon, and this year's medals for the 25 to 30,000 athletes and other participants in the marathon that are going to be coming here and running in October down our streets, they have featured the Long Branch Streetcar on all the medals. So this will be going around the world. They will see our transit system on the bridge at Broadview before it splits off onto King and to Queen. So I wanted to make that presentation and say it was a wonderful night, and I'm glad they picked us for their medal. Thanks to the Canada Running Series, and thank you to Brad. Just a quick thank you to Brad Ross and his team for all of their help with the Canada Running Series and picking it up and running with it.
Yep. Mr. Chair, I think if you look close, you'll see a likeness of you looking out the window waving.
I believe so. That was a beautiful touch. Why don't we get Brad and Rick maybe to receive this from Commissioner Fragedakis?
Is there light here?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I won't be wearing one of those.
Even the 5K gets it.
Yeah, the 5K.
That's great.
Thank you, Commissioner Fragedakis, for that. And now the CEO will just introduce the CEO's report, and we'll move to questions from that. I'm going to borrow him from the Vice Chair. I'll go for it.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, Commissioners. We have a few slides up here for you today as I go through the opening remarks. I'd like to update you on a few items that and initiatives over and above what's been included in the CEO's report. I'll start with Wilson Yard. We've recently had a number of issues with Wilson Yard that have caused us some delays, fairly big delays, as a matter of fact, starting on June 1st, Friday, June 1st. Because Wilson Yard actually provides 48 of the 63 trains required in service on Line 1, and because we only have one hostler, and that's one way in north and one way out as well southbound, when problems occur in the yard, it's pretty significant impact to service. You know, complicated technical issues involving signaling system software upgrades and a very brief power outage in the signaling system provided the perfect storm for service when Wilson Yard P&L could not be rebooted and there was no way to route trains out of the yard. For a short time, it looked like we wouldn't be able to be moving trains very quickly out of that yard, and we took immediate action. We established shuttle buses from Lawrence West to St. George. We actually borrowed 9 trains off of Line 2 to provide service from Finch and St. George, as well as running 7 trains from Vaughan Metropolitan Center to Lawrence West. While we made arrangements to actually hand crank the switches so the trains could be dispatched from the yard, we were able to get the signaling system back and online and actually restore service much quicker than we feared. But I would tell you that this same incident occurred a number of times, both on the June 4th, 7th, and again on the 8th. This past weekend, we actually had a cross-functional team work to try to recreate the fault and find a permanent solution. Unfortunately, the failure could not be recreated despite multiple attempts. And what we did is to prevent another failure from impacting service again, we installed a workaround, and so that if it failed again, we could instantaneously move trains through the Hostler platform. That was actually put to a test again yesterday. Staff were able to seamlessly use the secondary method, and it didn't occur a delay. I'll say that Jim Ross and myself met with senior staff from Talus, our signal contractor, yesterday, the contractor for Wilson Yard, and I've had their commitment that they're going to work together to find this root cause and address it. We've also been looking at the overall schedule to see what we can do with the upgrade of Wilson Yard and try to take advantage of opportunities to accelerate that work. The systems in the basement of that facility are 40 years old. While we continue to work on the problems at Wilson, I do have some good news to share for our subway riders, and that is who are looking forward to improving the morning weekend peaks. We've started running a few select vehicles between Eglinton and Union Station only, which provides a minimum of 6 extra trains in service between Eglinton and Union, and it takes the pressure off the fully loaded trains that are coming down from Finch and helps clear the platforms along as we enter the core. What this doesn't change our headways or allow more trains through at Bloor because of the current signal system, but it does mean that between Eglinton and Union can more easily handle the passenger loads, as well as for us the critical aspect of Bloor Station having the safety of the platform both in north and southbound. The next issue I'll talk about is some of our closures as well as a little labor. As you know, we've had to cancel several weekend closures since April because our ATU Local 113 is no longer agreeing to work overtime, being on 48 hours a week. I'm pleased to report that we are on track of hiring new operators and some mechanics, and closures will resume the week of June 24th with our state of good repair taking place on Line 3. We'll be working with our stakeholders to revisit the remaining weekends this year, and we're going to very likely be adding closures to our schedule in an effort to catch up on missed opportunities. On the labor side, we have achieved 2 ratified collective agreements, both with Lodge 235 and QP Local 5089, as well as we have 2 outstanding. That's with Local 2 and ATU 113. While the TTC and Local 2 reached a negotiated outcome, which was recommended to the membership, it ultimately was not ratified. As such, we're in the process of scheduling dates with the Minister of Labor and a conciliator. If an agreement is not reached in conciliation, it will proceed to interest arbitration, as we now are in with the case with the 113. As for 113, Local 113, the Ministry of Labor has appointed a respected labor arbitrator, William Kaplan, to resolve the contract, and we're in the process of scheduling dates right now. We're checking everyone's availability. We've actually offered evenings and weekends where possible to get a quick resolution. Bus reliability, I'm going to put the slide up, and as you can see on the slide, it's also on page 58 of our report. Over the course of your tenure as a board, there's been a significant improvement in our rates, or the reduction in our rates, of bus breakdowns in service. The orange line actually depicts 2014 and the blue line last year, as well as the green bars this year, showing the first 4 months of the year and how well we're doing, with an ultimate target of 1.5% failure in service, recognizing things happen. Our bus maintenance practices have moved from reactive to proactive. This improves bus reliability and performance, meaning that customers are experiencing far fewer delays due to having a bus pulled out of service for a reason. Next, I'm going to talk about McNichol Garage. While I'm talking about buses, we're pleased to report that we've made some excellent progress at McNichol Garage. Again, we have the picture up above. Foundations have been installed in the northern portion of the building, and those in the south portion are in progress. In this photo, at the end of May, you can see structural steel installation after 2 weeks being viewed from Milken Boulevard, which is the west side of the facility. On the left, you can see the exit overhead door openings, as well as on the right, the main entrance to the administration building. Going forward, we will continue with the installation of the remaining foundations, steel structures, and begin the installation of the precast structural walls and panels, as well as site services, the storm sewer and sanitary sewer and other utilities. That will take place this summer. And as for construction, we are still on track for the middle of 2020. As we've done for many years, the TTC's participated in Doors Open in last month. On May 26, more than 9,000 people visited Bay Lower Station. This was considered our most successful Doors Open yet. As you can see in the photos, guests toured displays of movies and TV shows that have been filmed over the years, and were able to check out this really special Lego display that has been made. We had a subway operator, Aaron Chapman, designed and built the Toronto Rocket subway train Lego prototype. And actually, in order for him to have this design made into for toy stores, 10,000 votes need to be cast on the Lego Ideas website. With more than a year to go, Aaron is a quarter of the way there, and we always tell people, if you're interested in voting, the website has been put up. The next issue will be Pride. You may have already seen this year's beautifully wrapped Pride bus running this month on the Route 94. The bus will be driven in the Pride Parade by Operator Gail Hollett on Sunday, June 24th, and joined by other employees as well as their family and friends. You know, we serve a diverse city and are pleased to celebrate Pride with this bus and this month's Metro Pass showcasing the 519 mural, an image of the Church Wesley Village BIA that celebrates the LGBTQ community. And with that, Chair, that concludes my opening remarks.
Thank you very much. We are going to go to questions to the CEO, starting with Commissioner De Laurentiis.
Rick, just on the incidents, I just noticed on page 26 that and I hadn't noticed this stat before, and if it's in every report, I apologize. It means I'm not reading as diligently as I should, but I noticed that there were 85 false alarms reported during this period, and that would be a third of the 300 passenger-related incidents. So 2 questions around that. 1, is that the norm? And 2, can we penalize such action? Because it looks to me like a large number.
Through the chair, Commissioner, typically a little more than 50% of our emergency alarm incidents are false alarms. When we look at it, it's on the average of about 55% per year. So if you could, I think if a constable could prove that it was a malicious intent to disrupt service, then possibly a charge of mischief could be laid. I'm not a special constable, and I don't see Mr. Killingsworth in the room, but I think that would be difficult to prove.
Other questions? Commissioner Campbell?
Just looking at on the streetcar performance, I'm just going to go to page 53. So there's the 2 types of old streetcars. I couldn't tell you the difference if I was on one, but the CLRVs have, I guess, a better failure rate than the ALRVs, and yet we're taking both off the road at the same time. Why wouldn't we? Why do we not take the ALRVs off? Because they have such a much poorer record of performance between breakdowns. It says most have been, like almost half have been decommissioned. I'm just wondering, why wouldn't we decommission all of those before the CLRVs?
Well, I'll jump in, Rich, for you until you get to a speaker. The CLRVs are the older vehicle. Actually.
CLRVs the older.
Yes, they're the older. The A's are the articulated vehicles.
Okay.
Okay. However, the A's never received the overhaul 13 or 14 years ago in anticipation of being retired with the new vehicles coming in. So you see the reliability of these reliability figures I've talked about in the past. They're significantly lower than what the industry standard is, and that's why we're working so hard to get the new Bombardier vehicles in. We have to get these vehicles out of service. They're negatively impacting our service. It's partially the reason back early in January we made the announcement that Dundas and Carlton would have to be run by buses, because Rich is doing everything possible to keep these vehicles in service, but they're getting old and they're worn. They're now, some of the ECs are now over 40 years old.
Well, so, but when I look at the relative performance, the older ones perform a little bit better than the newer ones, the ALRVs, and yet we're taking the ALRVs off, or the CLRVs off at the same time. So how is that determination made as to when you pull something off?
Through the chair, so the ALRVs have inherent design flaw right from the start. They have more electrical problems. They are a younger fleet, and the Cs do have a better performance record. Okay. The fleet sizes are different. We only had 52 ALRVs to begin with, and we had 196 CLRVs. So they may look like we're decommissioning them at the same rate. However, by the end of next year, all the A's will be off.
Oh, they will. Okay, thank you. And then I guess Rick, this is for you. It's in regard to the change on Dundas Street. We've taken the streetcars off Dundas. Was that as a result of just of the lack of working streetcars on, and they need to be focused on the major routes?
That's correct. One of the things that we had a discussion with late last year with staff is if we're going to run streetcars and we're going to put them on routes, we have to run them and run the best possible. The business model is make sure we have vehicles to run the service that we're providing. So both Dundas and Carleton College, we put buses on this year. Now, staff are looking at it right now about looking at the opportunity to actually put service back on Carleton later this. We intended to go to the end of the year, but likely putting it back on with the delivery of the new vehicles.
Okay. And then my last question on streetcars is in regard to the 504 King. Do you have any updated data as to, or when will, if you don't have updated data now, when will we receive updated data as to increased, passenger volumes?
Through you, Mr. Chair. I believe July we have the report coming back. Kirsten, if I could...
Yeah, we can make a presentation in July. It's published every month on the city dashboard. We can bring a formal presentation back.
So it would be on the city, I could find it right now.
Yep, it's on the city dashboard.
So there are more passengers on that route, and are we running the streetcars more frequently as a result of more passengers? Are there more cars on it, more streetcars on it?
Yes, there are more cars too. We're trying to match capacity to demand. It's a constant challenge in the peak of the peak. Ridership has increased tremendously. We're estimating at this point we have about 84,000 daily riders on King.
That was up from an estimated 65?
Pre-pilot, we're at 72,000.
72,000?
72,000. Pre-pilot.
And now it's 80?
86.
86, okay.
If I may, Council, we're using the same...
I apologize, 84,000.
84.
It's now at 84,000.
Okay.
So we're using the same mindset as we did with bus when it comes to users runners-directed streetcars, having them situationally placed where we know we need to slide them in so we have the reliability of service throughout the network.
So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? No? I'll move to receive the CO's report. All those in favor? That carries. Thank you. Item number 2 is the ACAT minutes. If I could ask ACAT Chair Raymond Delera to just introduce those minutes to us, that would be appreciated. Welcome, Mr. Chair, and just you want to make sure your microphone's on. Whenever you're ready.
Okay. Yep, it's on. Okay, thank you very much, Chair Cole. Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to now share the highlights from our recently approved April minutes. The Communications Subcommittee is working in conjunction with staff to develop communications regarding emergency subway closures. Customer communications will develop a message to the public regarding the procedure, and ACAT members will have input on the messaging. The Design Review Subcommittee reviewed TTC design standards to suggest updates and additions in order to maintain consistency throughout the system. That subcommittee also reviewed the 3 prototype battery electric buses with respect to the overall structure of the vehicles. The Service Planning Subcommittee reviewed the evacuation exercise conducted on the TYSSE with the use of a multi-camera presentation, which allowed our members to view different aspects, including the use of the subway emergency rescue vehicle. The modification of the rescue vehicle, as recommended by ACAT, resulted in a much more efficient use of that equipment. The Wheel-Trans Operations Subcommittee gave input on enhancements to the Wheel-Trans trip booking website to make the trip booking process easier to navigate. And lastly, we note that this month ACAT will be participating at the annual People in Motion show being held at a new venue, which is Variety Village. ACAT will have its own booth in order to promote accessible transit. That concludes our highlights for today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Any questions of staff about the minutes? No? Okay, I'll move adoption or a receipt of the ACAT minutes. All those in favor? That carries. We're on to item number 3, where I believe we're going to have a presentation on the rebuild and redesign of TTC.ca. With our door chimes sounds returning?
We could take that under consideration.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners. Deb Brown, who is our acting head of customer communications, is going to give you a presentation of what our new website will look like. Come July, phase 1 will look like this homepage you see here. There are other added features that will be coming in phase 2. We've been working on this since January, and I just wanted to give you a sense of what it's going to look like, give the public a sense of what it's going to look like, and Deb will just take you through this, what is a live site behind a firewall right now. Deb?
Thank you. Before I start, we just so you know how we landed on this design, we took a look at all the analytics from the old site, and that determined what would go on our top row here. So these 4 tiles are the most visited areas of the site today. You'll see it's got a new look, large images, and you'll also notice the yellow live alerts widget. So this will be when we're pushing, when transit control is pushing out real-time messaging. And this little widget will move with you as you move through the site. And when it's live, it will tell you how many active alerts we have going. In this first section here, we'll put basically news you can use. So it's the information that customers need right up front, construction, diversions, that type of thing. Then we move down right now into another large image, and it's being place held with HR, so recruitment. And that, of course, is changeable anytime we decide. This section here will likely stay most static. It's got the board, materials and procurement, safety, security, and accessibility. And in a sec, once I get off the homepage, I'll show you inside. Presto, of course, and as we move into Presto later on in the year, this will, of course, bounce up to the top. And then this bottom piece is really about the customer experience and things that we're doing to make the ride or the journey a little bit better for customers. Finally, the store, sign up for my TTC services, and then the footer. So I'll just run you through a couple of quick pages so I don't take too much of your time. Routes and schedules, and I just lost my connection. Oh no. Well, that's annoying. Well, here, I can show you the mobile until we figure it out. We have, this is a fully responsive website, so it will size based on your phone, your tablet, or your desktop. And on a phone, you'll see that it just scrolls through. I just can't believe I lost my connection.
We're going to have some IT help for you, hopefully.
Is that wire?
No, that's not.
It's this one.
Well,
So this website, just some background. The last time we redid the website was in 2008. Prior to that, as Chair Cole noted, when you land on our page, we had the lovely door chimes of the subway, and that was from the 2000s. So this has been revamped in a way that is fully accessible, so every single page will be accessible. We have a third party who's doing an accessibility audit on the site. We've shown it to ACAT as well. So our objective is to ensure that the website is, of course, accessible, but that the mobile site as well doesn't require you to do anything differently. It will adjust to your phone as modern websites should.
Okay, so while we look at technology, are there questions that people have right now before we get to that additional information? If not, we'll, yep, go ahead, Commissioner Campbell.
Just ask a couple of number of questions. How many site visits do we get on a daily basis or a weekly basis, or how do you measure it? And is it?
You get about 35,000 a day.
35,000 a day. And is that a number that's rising? I would guess.
Yes, it's been going up. I would say We're pretty up and down, but I would say stable at 35.
And do you have any way of telling if people are satisfied with the visit? Like, are they going? So I guess, are they going and are they getting what the information that they need, or are they frustrated and abandoning their visit?
I think on our current site, to be honest, they'd be having problems finding what they need. We will be testing and doing some work with Environics as soon as we launch the beta to see if people are able to find what they need and how quickly.
Do you have any means of getting feedback now?
I'd have to look at our analytics and see if I could do so.
Okay.
Other questions? Vice Chair Heisey.
So right now, if you want to load a Presto card, you go to a Presto website.
Yes.
Will you be able to load your card by entering through the TTC website?
You'll be able to enter and go straight out to Presto.
So it's a link?
Yeah.
Okay.
A question about, I would assume that most people are using now some kind of app to determine when their next bus is coming. With kind of the migration of people to apps that to get that type of information, what kind of function does the website play, you know, in kind of that changing, shifting world of how people consume this stuff?
Well, surprisingly, people are still coming to the website. They're going for routes and schedules. They might not, a lot of the apps are next vehicle, so they might want to check something in the future. The trip links, trip planners used a lot to plan your journey. So there's various reasons that people come to the site versus going to an app.
Okay.
The apps primarily are for, as Deb mentioned, next vehicle. And so what we do is we provide that data in real time through OpenTO, who then provide it to developers who develop apps like Rocketman, for example. Or, you know, even if you went to nextbus.com, you know, it will recognize where you are if you have your location services turned on. The only app we really have at this time is the Safe TTC app. Otherwise, most of the apps that are out there are generated by third parties who we let, you know, app developers do their thing. They know apps, we know transit, we give them the data through OpenTO. So we have a lot of data that we provide publicly that people can do things with.
Commissioner Lalonde.
Yeah, other than Presto, do we offer the capability to integrate with GO or any of the other regional transit systems that ring around Toronto, like for wayfinding, that sort of thing?
Well, through the website and trip links, yes. If you take a regional trip, it will give you GO, YRT, and link you right into the TTC.
Okay, and if I went on the TTC website and I wanted to ask how to get to some address in Oakville, I'd be able to
Yeah,
do
trip
that?
links will do that for you.
Okay, thank you.
It's fully integrated with all GTHA properties.
Great.
Great. Any other questions? I'll just suggest that in the interest of time, we will, for any commissioners who are interested, we certainly can do follow-up meetings or have questions answered, and I'm sure there'll be other ways we can kind of share this information with the public too. So I will move a receipt of the update. All those in favor? That carries. Thank you very much. We're moving to item number 7. And on item 7, we have a deputant, that is Hamish Wilson. And this item is the MOU with the Scarborough and Rouge Hospital and the Scarborough Subway Extension.
Should be doing.
Yep. And
Thank you.
go ahead. I'll start your time. You have 5 minutes.
In some ways, yes, I know you have to go ahead and do things that have been mandated by the council, or council as they sometimes call it, and the commission. But regrettably, I really think that it's unfortunate we haven't thought about other options to provide service throughout Scarborough. And really, have these people in the hospital, have they been offered options if we had a proper EA process? I think this is the solution to Scarborough. One of the solutions, along with the LRT, is using this hydro corridor for some form of hey, you can build a subway there if you want.
Well, I feel like
I
we've
don't
had,
care.
sorry, just to interrupt for a moment, I'll hold your time. I feel like we have this conversation regularly whenever the word Scarborough is in an item, that it gives free rein to talk about any Scarborough transit plan or thought in that region. And so I know it's difficult because a lot of what we dealt with was in camera, but really the item is an MOU between the Scarborough and us and the hospital. So if I could try and gear you towards that and steer you towards that as much as possible, that would be appreciated.
Well, thank you, sir. It's just that I think we're in a situation where we have, or will have, because we've had a change in government, just because we have a plan to build a subway now, doesn't mean to say that it's actually going to get built. There is something called a Queen Street subway. There was a downtown relief line. You know, we're still waiting for Relief West. We cannot afford to continue to build subways into sprawl that have such high operating and capital costs. Even today, sir, as you may have seen in the newspaper.
Okay, I am aware of your position. You're not speaking to the item. This happens every time you're here, so please speak to the item.
I'm interested in squeezing the billions, sir. You're not interested in squeezing the billions.
Excuse me, please, we're not debating the Scarborough subway. Please speak to this item.
I think you're wasting a huge amount of sum, and you're not serving the people of Scarborough. The Liberal government, as your father might know, did not win in Scarborough. They did not win well. The federal level may be very interested in serving the people of Scarborough better than the subway.
Thank you very much. Thank you for coming. I don't think any questions for this deputant?
Oh,
No.
I'm tempted, but no.
Okay, thank you. Questions of staff? Moved by, the staff recommendations are moved by, the actions taken in camera are moved by Commissioner DeBearmaker. All those in favor? That carries. Item number 11, I think it was the draft consolidated financial statements, and I believe that was held by Commissioner Campbell, so we'll start with him with questions.
Yes, thank you. It's on page 12, and it's in regard, who am I speaking to on this? You, through the chair. Perfect, that's the proper procedure. It's in regard to revenue recognition. It says, revenue from passes is recognized in the period in which they are valid. An estimate of tickets and tokens sold, which will be used after the year end, and an estimate of passes sold, but only valid after the year end, are included in deferred passenger revenue. So I'm just wondering why we don't recognize the revenue when the purchase is made, specifically with respect to Metro passes.
It's an accounting principle that you try and match when the cash was received in your revenue to your estimate of the period when it was received. So it does end up having to be an estimate for passes. But
sorry, can you speak into that? I can't hear you too well. I know you're new, but there's a microphone right there, okay? So.
It's an accounting principle where you try and match, and it's a well-established principle under generally accepted accounting principles, you match when you recognize the revenue to when you think the service was consumed.
So the only thing is, if somebody has a Metro, so many retailers use gift cards, and gift cards are purchased not unlike a Metro Pass, and sometimes they're not always consumed. So I don't know what retailers do with gift cards, but there are possibilities that people are I guess buying tokens or tickets or what have you, and they're not using them. They get lost, and then that revenue is never recognized.
Well, on the question of loss, again, it's an estimate, and we'll find out towards the end of this year or next year, I guess, how accurate we've been. But we do actually make an estimate of what number of tickets and tokens are lost, and book to revenue an estimate of the value of that loss, because the token will never be used.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, and strictly speaking, I can't speak for every single retailer, but if the retailer is following GAP, so I'm sure Canadian Tire would, for example, or Starbucks, you would see, if you go to their balance sheet, you will see an item where they would put on their balance sheet, rather in revenue, the value of gift cards that hadn't yet been used.
Oh, okay, they do that, okay. So the other question is in regard to amortization, and on page 13, and I don't know. I don't know how the TTC does this. There's such a wide range of years over which equipment is amortized. So subways from 20 years to 65 years, track work 15 to 30 years, rolling stock 6 to 30 years. How do you make a determination on each specific item as to the length of time over which it's going to be depreciated? Because those are wide ranges.
Yes, and subways is not a single asset class. Within subways, and I'd be happy to share with you the detail, within subways there are several different types of assets. So the actual basic subway body, the body of the train, which lasts for quite a while, that would be amortized over a longer period of time, where something like the seats, for example, in the subway, which wear out a lot faster, they would be amortized over a faster period of time. So I haven't committed to memory yet what all the different asset classes all are for the various roll-ups, but it's your question is top of mind because I did review that with PricewaterhouseCoopers as part of the audit this year because they were asking the same question. They reviewed, did a deep dive on specifically buses, how we were amortizing buses to satisfy themselves that the range for buses was appropriate.
And so are some of our stock completely depreciated? Like this, for example, we just, in the CO's report, we talked about some of those streetcars. Are they fully depreciated at this point?
It's an interesting, don't ask me to explain how accountants ended up so far from reality. That's a story over a beverage. But yes, we would have assets that on the books were fully depreciated that we are using in daily service.
Got it.
But according to the accountants, they've worn out.
Right. Okay. That's all. Thanks.
Other questions? Do you want to move the staff recommendation? Okay, staff recommendation moved by Commissioner Campbell. All those in favor? That carries and brings us to item number 12, which I also believe you held. So questions, please go ahead.
So, through you, Mr. Chair, to the CEO. So there's some very interesting trends coming now with our ridership and with our revenue. So our passenger ridership is down year to date, according to the table, by 3.9 million passengers. But our revenue is only down by $1.9 million. So, and the report does point out that it's because as more people go to Presto, the numbers that we were believing to be ridership numbers under the old MetroPass system have proven to be not accurate. So, one of you, I don't know if you have a comment on that. That's fairly, I mean, ridership. What are the implications for the TTC in terms of ridership and what we believed in the past and what we will know going forward?
Well, through you, Mr. Chair, what I would tell you is what we expect to happen is we will increase our revenues on the average fare because of this new system, and our ridership will go down based on the way we do actual counts versus the projections previously identified. That's what others have seen when they've gone to automation.
So now I understand we've got 25% of users, our riders, are now using the Presto card, and we're going to talk. Well, we'll talk about this a little bit later. What is the adoption rate on Presto? Well, you know, I'll get to that question, I guess, when we talk about that. Okay. I don't think I had.
Well, that's our next item. So.
Oh, I think I did have one question. Sorry, it's in regard to overtime, and it's on page 7. And I think actually you might have addressed this. This is about us not being able to utilize the extra hours. You said you're hiring more operators. Is that correct? To get back to that. Okay. So that's all I had, Mr. Chair.
Okay. So we'll have Commissioner Campbell move the staff recommendations. All those in favor? That carries. Item number 13, which is a good segue there. This is a Presto update and transition overview. There are members of the public who have signed up to speak on this, starting with Michael Rosenberg, and then Adam Roy Cahoon and Hamish Wilson.
We'll keep that one.
Okay. You have 5 minutes. Please go ahead.
Okay, so this is about the single-use transferable fares. I have a couple of members from the group that we have in Regent Park. Right now, we regularly buy rolls of tokens and seniors tickets. Obviously, the issue is the replacement of those by cards. Obviously, you're well on the way towards the production of the cards. That's taken care of. But the question is, who's going to be able to buy them? And obviously, right now, we pay the $3 price and the $2.05 price because that's the way you sell them. You sell them in bulk, and they are separated by me and transferred by me. In other words, you only sell them in bulk. So, of course, we're paying the regular $3 price. Now, obviously, you know that many of those tokens are used in that way to be given out, and you're prepared for that, but so far the staff are saying they think that only charities need to do this. And the main reason I'm here is to tell you that there are lots of groups besides charities that buy rolls of tokens at the $3 price and then use them for the purpose of transferring them or giving them out to people. It is for groups like ours, which is essentially a club or association that is not for charitable purposes. It mostly consists of low-income people, but that is not its defined purpose, and we are not a charity and don't want to become a charity because we're not a charity. We don't do this for charitable reasons. We do it for social and political reasons. So we're not a charity, and this type of group exists and gives out tokens to its members. Another person who has sometimes been a member of the group was here earlier today, John Deacon. He gives out tokens to customers of his business. So there are businesses, and in fact, I was first informed of this by the TTC staff themselves, that they know that businesses give out tokens to their customers. So basically, the bottom line is we are asking that anybody who purchases tokens, which would then become purchases of the new single-use cards, in multiples of 50, should be able to purchase them at the price they currently pay, which is the non-cash regular price of $3 or $2.05 for a seniors type card. We think that basically all of these groups and families who buy tokens to use amongst several people, that may not continue as much in the future, but it might, or even individuals who simply give out tokens to other individuals. There are many people besides charities who give tokens or the new cards out, and we think they should be able to purchase them at the same price and in the same way they currently do. If they buy them in multiples of 50, they should pay the $3 price, and nobody should have to pay an additional cost of 25 cents because of technological change. And it's not really an increase of 25 cents, because if I am told that I cannot get these at $3, I will stop buying them. You will lose about $15,000 worth of business per year, and more importantly, the people who currently receive them will not be seeing a price increase from $3 to $3.25. They will be seeing a price increase from $0, which is what they currently pay, to $3.25. So you are actually drastically increasing people's price that they will have to pay, and obviously many of those people will just not use TTC as much as they used to. So don't increase the price from $3, because that really means an increase from $0 to $3.25, and that means you're losing a lot of business and a lot of people will go without transit. So basically, the request is that the availability of the new cards should be to any group, regardless of whether they are a charity or not. Any group that gives out tokens to its members should be able to get them at the same price of $150 for a roll. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions for the presenter? No. Thank you very much for your presentation. I saw Adam there. Go ahead, Adam, when you're ready.
I'm ready now. I'm Adam Cahoon. I am an individual that is already a Presto user, but I recognize that a lot of my friends on lower incomes are not going to be as lucky to have a credit card, to have family that when they can't put it on their own credit card, can use their family's credit card to upload the Presto or have the debit thing. I've noticed that you guys have decided so far that your Presto network is only going to be Shoppers Drug Marts and stuff. And I can testify to anybody that has to use the Shoppers Drug Mart network for picking up parcels, that if you don't live in one of those areas where Shoppers Drug Mart is going to make a good whack of money selling you makeup and other drugs and other sundries, that network does not work for selling these for loading a Presto card. Now I do understand that you guys are working on the disposable or the one-use ticket Presto token, and that was only because we have put heavy pressure on you guys to actually do that. And so I encourage you to actually look at extending the network of places where extending the network to, at least for a while, have any place where we could buy tokens if they want to sell the limited use fare. We also do not want them to expire. Now, we recognize that you guys also probably want to get more people, even on low incomes, onto the Presto. I recommend that Shoppers Drug Mart is not the best place for us when we're not buying other items to actually just go in and use their little thing to load our Presto card. I'm encouraging you guys to look at for loading and checking balances and stuff, working with community centers and libraries, places where people on lower incomes usually feel a little bit more comfortable getting a little bit more support to actually do those transactions. The last thing I want to, or two things, but one of the last things I want to say is we hope these limited use mediums will not expire. We want to be able to hold on to them when we need them, like we can hold on to tokens now for a long time. The other thing is I think it's sort of been obvious, but not really talked about openly, the fact or not advertised enough, the fact that you guys aren't going to do a token buyback program. And I bet there are people out there that still think that there is going to be a token buyback program. So if you guys, and I would ask that you guys think about doing that, but if you are saying no, I say you start getting the message out soon that there is going to be no token buyback program, because tokens are used a little bit like a currency on the streets. not widely, but it is used and as a currency. So keep that in mind too. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Questions for our deputants, for Adam? Yep, question from Commissioner Campbell for you.
They're going to stop selling tokens in August, according to the report, and they're going to be good until December the 31st, it looks like. Do you not think that's not enough time to use up all your tokens?
I'm saying that there will be people that think they can still hold on to their token. They're gonna think it's like every other ticket token upgrade that you've ever done. That they're just gonna assume that they can line up at Bloor Station or Davisville and sell them. Or get them exchanged for these new limited use media. What I think that you just gotta make sure that it is basically well educated, that that these tokens, that there are probably hoarders out there that have thousands of tokens.
They're probably very rich then if they've got thousands of tokens.
No, that they've collected over time from charities, but taken them and then just walked home. So I want to say, you just need to let people know soon that these items are basically going to depreciate sooner than you think.
Okay, thanks. That's it.
Okay. Thank you very much. I don't think there are any other questions. We'll move to our next deputant, which is Hamish Wilson. Go ahead. I'll start your time. You have 5 minutes.
I'll try and be less. Like some of the subways, sometimes we have less performance than is promised, and it's unfortunate, but sometimes that happens. Certainly the situation that we got ourselves into, the province wasn't going to give us the gas tax money unless we took the Presto, and maybe that's probably a wiser decision over time. But it does feel sometimes that it's not, it's more of a degrade than an upgrade, especially for some of us irregular users. I support transit in theory, especially if it's a wise investment and not the spending, and thanks to all of those who actually do the work to keep the system running. I note, for instance, with the Presto, if you don't have a charged Presto card, you can't actually use the secondary subway entrances, it seems. That's a frustration, and I must admit, I do prefer the tokens sometimes instead of having to go and charge a Presto card, because I'm such an old guy, I guess, that I don't have electronic banking. So it seems that in order to actually charge up a Presto card, you have to go somewhere that actually takes cash. So that's a frustration. The Union Station, and I don't explore the details of where to go as much as I should. I'm more interested in squeezing the billions. So, I go down to the Union Station, and that seems to accept cash. So that's a frustration in that it doesn't actually work all that well generally for me. It's great if you're charged up, but it seems to be irregular. I could be wrong on that. I've also had some grumpiness with the overall system, and that sort of relates to not charging the card up. Perhaps the card didn't, or the card reader misread, and I had my card denied, and I figured, I can't use my Presto card once, and then I needed to take the transit because on that very windy day I had a sheet of bubble wrap blow into my bike, and I went down and I was gimping around, and it gave me a flat tire as well, which is strange to think that bubble wrap would do that. And yes, Mr. Heisey, things can happen when you're on a bike. Yes.
The beaver won.
What? Yeah, no, it's okay. I introduced the topic. At least you ride a bike and appreciate some of the hazards, including the streetcar tracks and the areas just beside them, which are really, really rough on King and Queen, by the way, notice of hazard. So I was gimping around, and I took the transit out after parking the bike after the Sarah Kleeman-Haga launch, and I took the transit back in, had my token after buying it, and put it into the machine and on the streetcar, and it wouldn't go in. I blew it down, and it popped something puffed out during the bottom. I grabbed that, and I wasn't thinking so clearly, and that went back to my seat thinking about this and that. Fare inspector came on board. I didn't grab the right piece of paper, or it didn't actually produce the right piece of paper, and I got a very costly fare evasion fine, which I totally, I remonstrated, said no, I paid the fare. Your paper didn't set it. So as far as I'm concerned, it's not really a good system in some ways. The fare evasion penalties, people have been killed from automobile drivers, I think, and get less of a fine than what you get for fare evasion. So that's a problem. So I'm not sure it's really all that good a system sometimes, and when you know the details about this and that, when you think that the new subway extension gives 25 ride subsidy north of York University, it's $10 a ride for those who use the Shepherd subway. If the Scarborough subway extension gets built and attracts new riders, it'll be at a cost of $1.5 million each. Oh my goodness, it doesn't feel exactly fair these days. So you have some issues. I'm not sure that the system is actually working all that well, but in some ways it's great.
To finish on a positive note.
Yes. Thank you very much. Any questions? No. Okay, thank you all for all our presenters. We'll now move to the item and begin with questions of staff. Do we have a presentation? Do we? No, only. I think I'm going to consider it read, so we don't need a presentation,
Well,
correct?
it just arrived. When did it arrive? I'll just ask a question.
Okay, you're second. Commissioner De Laurentiis to start.
I've got a bunch of questions. So the first one is around the contract. Since we're moving into phase 2, I'm wondering whether there's an opportunity to review the scope of services from Presto. I see, for example, that we have a separate fare gate arrangement, and so one of the questions that is actually kind of related to the governance question, but would fall into this one as well, is around whether we have an operations group that would include Presto, that would include the supplier of the fare gate, that would include our own operations people, so that issues such as compatibility and failure rates, which we seem to have to experience with the gates, can be considered. So the broader question is around, is there an opportunity to review and reset any of the terms of the contract, given that we are going into phase 2, particularly with respect to the scope of services and the kind of governance structure that we have in place for operational issues? So we'll start with that.
So through the chair, we're working with Metrolinx now to catalog the business requirements in the current contract, basically to determine what's been satisfied, what hasn't been satisfied, and what doesn't need to be satisfied, given how long we've been in this contractual arrangement and how the business model, changes, and we need to reflect our future. In terms of actually delivering, we work very closely with SNB and Metrolinx in an operational in steering committees, and there is governance around delivering the contract in that way. But there is an opportunity to revisit the contract as we review the requirements.
Okay, well, that moves nicely into the second question around the governance structure, which is on page 14. And it seems to me that it's kind of complex, more complicated than it needs to be. And it's more focused, there's more of a focus on executive management committees rather than operational committees. In any technology project, all of the details are really what matter, and they're really in the working of the technology. So is it just that it isn't obvious to us in this report because you haven't included it, Or are there, to what extent are there operations type committees that would be concerned with those technical details?
So I think there's a couple of points to be made in response to that question. One is that Metrolinx itself has operating, through its governance structure, has operating committees that we are a part of. In terms of what the TTC does in conjunction with Metrolinx, it is very much simply how we work with Metrolinx. There's no formal governance structure in that way. We use our Presto steering committee internally for governance, and then we do use the joint executive committee to raise issues to the executive table.
Is there an opportunity, and I would think this would be an opportunity we should take, to formalize those operations committee? As a user, it would seem to me that we ought to be much more than just a participant on a Metrolinx operating committee, but, you know, sort of being, have some authority in terms of being able to direct operational issues or to ask for operational solutions. So is that something we could consider?
Yes, absolutely. It's an opportunity, and I think your point is well taken, that we do need to strengthen the governance as we move, particularly as we deliver the last of the key functionality. So your point is well taken.
Okay, and then my last question is really around the system performance. I didn't see anywhere in the report where the question of the customer experience analysis is fed into the system performance. There's lots of stuff around, you know, the system itself, it's the failure, the technical elements of it. But again, as we've heard, I think we hear consistently about the Presto system. It's really, its success or failure really is in its usage by individuals, its adoption rate, its you know, ability to load easily, ability to get a transfer, ability to get all of that information. That's the only true test that counts to me in this kind of technology project. So I didn't see anywhere where we would feed in customer experience analysis to determine operational changes, you know, technology upgrades or whatever. So again, maybe you know, I missed. I just didn't read it properly, or it's not self-evident in this report.
So I think for us, the customer experience is critical. We have Michelle Picard-Cousins is here, for a manager of customer experience. She's very key in developing the policies that will be coming to the board in Q1 around customer experience and customer journeys. And we will, through the customer satisfaction survey, we will adopt specific questions around the use of the fare card and ease of use. At 25% adoption, I think this is something we want to think about when we're getting closer to the 2-hour transfer and seeing where we get to a significant adoption rate, and we can gauge how our customer experience. I mean, we do understand some of the points of friction that were outlined by some of the deputants today, and we recognize those, and we do work with Metrolinx to resolve some of that stuff. But yeah, the customer experience is critical.
Well, I would go further than, you know, we're talking about adoption.
You're just over 6 minutes, so I'll come back to you with other questions, and we'll move to Commissioner Campbell.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. Has there been any discussion about having cards made available for purchase at community centers or libraries?
So in recognition of what the deputant pointed out, we do recognize that the Shoppers Drug Mart retail network does present some gaps for some neighborhoods in Toronto. We have raised that issue with Metrolinx, and they are fully aware that we need to work to fill those gaps. And in fact, in conversation, utilizing city locations such as community centers, libraries has been discussed. I would not suggest, though, we're in any place to make that recommendation or to, you know, that's very preliminary discussions, but we do recognize there will be a gap for some people.
Next question is in regard to the Metro Pass. Why are we waiting until December to get rid of the old Metro Pass and convert everybody over to Presto who wants to buy the unlimited monthly pass?
So I think essentially what we are being cautious.
Why are we being cautious?
We're being cautious based on our previous experience with rolling out equipment across the system. We're now rolling out the FMVD, which is the key kiosk that will be in all the subway stations that will allow a person to purchase a pass and do all of the sort of self-serve functionality. We need those to work. They will be rolled out in June at all of the print. They're rolling out now. You probably may have seen them at some locations, and we will be filling in the gaps in the system in October. And we really just are being cautious in the sense that we want to ensure that the equipment will work for people who want to move to the pass.
Isn't it to our benefit to the sooner the better in terms of getting information and having an understanding of customer journeys? Wouldn't it be better to have that completed sooner? And I'll let you answer that, and then I have another question. So wouldn't it be better for us if we, in terms of our implementation, if we could roll it out more quickly than December?
There's definitely benefits financially to move people over more quickly. There's definitely benefits from a data perspective. But I think what we have to think about is the customer experience, our reputation, the credibility in the fare card. As we move people over, this will be the only way, essentially, that people will be able to pay. And frankly, it needs to work, and we're being cautious.
So would I have 25% adoption right now to Presto? Is that correct?
That's correct.
So how many of those 25% are MetroPass users?
We have about 13% of adult MetroPass sales are on Presto.
Okay. All right. And then, so the last question I have is in regard to the differentiated fare. I mean, and I just got this report. I haven't read it, but it says that the TTC issued photo for children and youth, and I guess seniors as well, is being put on hold for the time being. How will we in 2019 implement a differentiated fare for adults, children, seniors, for seniors and youth, for students?
So the report. No, what we're doing is we are mimicking our current concessions. So all of what we currently sell will be available on Presto. I think what you're referring to is the photo ID.
Okay.
And what we had decided to do is put that on hold until we could get Presto rolled out in a substantial way. Then to take a look at the gaps in the system and determine where we need to implement a photo ID policy.
So just a step back. So in regard to a senior's Presto card, how are we going to prevent fraud? How are we going to prevent anybody from buying a senior's card, or a Presto card that gives off a senior's fare?
Well, right now you have to use ID to set the concession, so that will continue.
But so it's only. You will not be able to buy a Presto card with the senior's fare online or in a station at a reload place.
Sorry, just have to get the detail.
Sure.
Just the concession requires the ID, but then you can buy fares. Okay. Yeah. So to set the concession, you can buy the pass at the machine, but to set the concession at either Shoppers Drug Mart or Davisville, you will need ID.
Okay. And only any
Once.
Shoppers or
Correct.
Davis only once. Okay.
Once.
But they're basically going to be walking around with a green Presto card that looks like everything else.
That's correct. That's currently the way it is in the rest of the GTA.
And sorry, how's my time? Just how is it done? Are we doing what's done in other jurisdictions around the world in terms of the differentiated fare? Like, have we learned lessons from what they might do in London or Paris or Barcelona or what have you? Is that what they do?
I think that we take best practices. I don't think that anybody has the absolutely, best system, and we have to take our fare policies into account. But I think we're putting out something that's, within world standards.
Okay. Okay. Well, we can come back if you have more questions. Commissioner Mihevc, and then Fragadakis, then Lalonde.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm just wondering, we have a contract with Metrolinx on the Presto system.
That's correct.
Is this all within the contract?
Do you mean all the functionality and everything we're rolling out?
So Presto fees, we're going from 26.6 million to 51 million. And 51 million, I think, is assuming the full cost of all the tickets for 2019, even though we're starting later on in the year.
So the contract is 5.25% including HST. So those numbers are assumptions built on adoption rates and what full adoption will look like.
So they haven't bumped us up?
No.
But it's on the piece of the fare media paid to Presto?
It's on the card. If it's a MetroPass, it's on the cost of the MetroPass. If it's a TAP, it's on the cost of the TAP.
And it's not, this does not assume that we're paying anything for legacy tokens and tickets and so on?
Correct.
Okay. So station collectors, operations, revenue operations, we still have them in 2019 because we still have the legacy system.
That's correct.
Does the contract say that they are responsible if they are late, because this is a little bit late in the rollout, that they are responsible for any late delivery of a fully implemented system?
There's nothing under the contract where we could charge back our operating expenses for how we make decisions around our operations.
Okay. They are responsible, though, for transition costs, correct? Which includes fare evasion, broken machinery, so on and so forth.
They are responsible for lost revenue. They're responsible for all of the functionality and ensuring that the equipment works properly, replacing the equipment if it doesn't work properly. For example, the first loading equipment was terribly unreliable, so they have given us a second generation of equipment, so that's their responsibility.
And then they're also, who's responsible if you do a 2-hour fare service? Is that on us to reprogram or on them?
Metrolinx provides us with that functionality on the 2-hour transfer. However, there is potentially an argument from Metrolinx that this is a change to the contract, and we have not had further discussions on that, but I want to...
The contract say?
The contract speaks to... Its contract is not specific enough for us to say decidedly that it allows for the 2-hour transfer. It's a matter of interpretation.
Okay, my last set of questions for 2 minutes are on the single fare options. So right now, in wearing my call it community services power reduction hat, what will be different once we get rid of the tokens? Will we be able to give to out of the cold programs, shelters, community organizations that give out free TTC tokens or tickets now? How will they be provided? What will be the system, the deal for them?
So we will be providing the ability for charities, organizations, private employers, groups that the deputant represented here today to buy bulk tickets. We have to...
At a reduced cost?
The pricing we'll need to bring back to the board.
Right.
So we're bringing back to the board in Q1 details around that, and the board can endorse the direction that we take in that regard.
So really, the difference between now and later will be, whereas now you give them tickets and tokens at a bulk rate, whatever it is. Later on, you'll get single fare. So I have a Presto card. They may or may not have a Presto card. They will get individualized paper passes that will be the equivalent of a token or a fare card. Nothing else will change. The distribution, more or less the cost, subject to this report. Distribution will be the same then as it is now. What will be different, if anything?
I think we're going to try and find some efficiencies and make it better for people who use bulk sales. We're consulting extensively with the stakeholders. There's a lot of different groups, school boards, very small organizations, homeless shelters. I mean, it's endless who need these bulk tickets. And perhaps the bulk ticket, the single ticket, will work for some groups, and perhaps it's an issue of actual Presto cards for others groups, perhaps if it's an in and out type of facility. So we want to work with the organizations to come up with the best possible solution. Will it look identical? I think that we will take the opportunity to tweak it and make it better and less cumbersome for people.
And you have a good system to track and relate to people, TDSB, out of the cold programs.
Yeah.
That's all part of the process.
Yes, and we'll consult with our the city stakeholders around poverty reduction strategy and so on.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Commissioner Fragadakis.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. So just to confirm, the Presto single ticket will be fully available by June 2019, correct?
That's correct.
And so the cause of the delay again?
So I think that the issue is this is a brand new product for Presto that they have not done for any other agency, and it's a requirement under our contract to create the single ticket. So this is a separate, and this isn't just a software change. This isn't just adding a past product. This is an actual separate functionality. So I think, and they have various vendors that they need to work with. I don't want to speak on behalf of Metrolinx, but Accenture's in S&B and others are on this. So it's a big, complicated project. It might be available before June. Again, we're being cautious because it's such a big change, and it is critical that this is right for us. So we're giving them a full opportunity to make sure they do all their testing and so on.
So I was pleased to see that we're going to seek the guidance of social service agencies and school boards on our internal policies and procedures that are going to support bulk ordering. So perhaps you'll reach out to some other nonprofits as well. I was wondering when we might expect a report on that to the board.
We're anticipating reporting back in Q1.
Okay, of next year.
Yeah.
So on page 13, it notes that the transition from current ridership calculation methodologies to a Presto-based methodology will likely result in lower ridership totals than have been previously reported, and will require development of a process to re-baseline TTC ridership. And I was wondering if you could elaborate on that. Someone.
So I think the wording of likely result is perhaps unfortunate. I think what we're trying to say there is that with the data is going to be much more precise. We're going to be able to count every single ride. Right now our ridership is based around a lot of estimates. I mean, we actually weigh tickets to make a decision on how many tickets are in the system. So I think what we're saying is we're going to see new numbers. From Rick's experience in other properties is that generally that we've seen, and we've talked to our colleagues, that ridership numbers go down. This doesn't mean the bus is any less crowded. It doesn't mean the train's any less crowded. It doesn't mean we need less buses, because those people are still there. It's just an issue of how are we counting them.
Okay, so on page 16, it talks about the rollout of fare gates, which are owned by the TTC, presented additional challenges versus the original plan to install Presto card readers attached to turnstile equipment at stations. So is the suggestion here that we would be better off if we had implemented the original plan?
No, the fare gates are, that's the modernization of our system. We wanted those over the turnstiles, and they're working at, quite well right now at 95% plus. So no, we're not suggesting that was a bad decision.
Oh, okay. Because I just said that they presented additional challenges versus the original plan, so perhaps I was reading into that.
I mean, I think the fare gates have presented challenges. We've spoken openly about those challenges at the board, but I think the decision, we would stick by our decision to actually install them.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Lalonde.
Yes, I'm interested in the single-use media as well. How will they work? Are they meant to be a paper card? Do they have a chip on them? Will they work the same way as a Presto card in terms of, it recording when you do a transfer and that sort of thing?
So I'm going to defer to Alan Foster, our head of fare card.
Sure. So they will work very similar to the Presto card. One of the biggest differences.
Just at the front, Alan.
Where's my head?
He's everywhere.
How's that? A little bit better?
Better, yeah.
Yeah. So the single-use ticket will work very similar to the Presto card in terms of its features and functions. You will be able to add a product to the card. Initially, we'll have the adult single ride added to the card, and you'll be able to use it at all of our payment devices. One of the biggest differences, though, is that nothing will be written back to the card. such that so that things like directional, anything that we would have typically written back to the Presto card won't be written back to the ticket. You'll purchase the ticket for a single ride. It'll allow for the 2-hour transfers, and then essentially the ticket is not usable after that point.
Right.
So that's the biggest difference, whereas the Presto card is designed so that it can be used over the life of the customer's transit history within the program. And you can continually add value.
Card would not be reloadable as well.
It is not reloadable. Right. Yeah, it is intended as a single ride product only.
Okay. And so do we also have a strategy for tourists to the city as to the products that they would buy?
Yes, so I mean, that is part of what we'll be bringing back, but one of the things that we'd like to do with this ticket or this product is be able to add 1, 2, perhaps a couple of rides onto the ticket so that it can be used, not as much as the Presto card, certainly, but certainly more than once.
So, yeah, and I think you mentioned that in the report. You might get a day pass card or maybe a 5-ride card or a 3-ride card, or so, and those are issues, I guess, that you're exploring, and you would come back with the full pricing strategy?
Yeah, in Q1, we'll bring back a full fare strategy for review.
The other question I had, and you may not know the answer to this yet, but I'd appreciate it as part of that, is what are the economics of the single-use cards? Like, how sophisticated are they? Is it as efficient for us to issue a single-use card as it is to issue a token, for example? Or like, are the electronics associated with that card cheap or, relatively expensive?
Well, I think that the technology behind the MyFare card, which is what it's the encryption algorithm, is world class. It is cutting edge. What it does give us, similar to tokens, when the token is compromised, they end up having to change the metallics and the other characteristics of the token to control counterfeit. With an electronic fare media, we get a lot more flexibility in allowing us to evolve the security profile around the card without having to make mechanical changes to the card itself. So it really just changes the paradigm and the approach that you take in terms of securing the product.
And the economics of the card, is that borne by Metrolinx?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So it's included in our
Yes.
global fee?
That's a cost that they bear.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Other questions? Vice Chair Heisey.
So I wanted to echo Mr. Cahoon's questions about Shoppers Drug Mart. Sort of my observation is that we rely on large capital to distribute, for example, beer and other things, and I'm wondering why we're limited to Shoppers Drug Mart. We haven't considered variety stores, independent businesses, and so there are more options. It's not, I don't have anything against Shoppers Drug Mart. It's just a question of more choices. So could somebody comment on why it's just Shoppers Drug Mart? And why it couldn't be other retailers?
So the contract with Shoppers Drug Mart or with Loblaw is with Metrolinx. It's Metrolinx that has established the retail chain, the relationship. So we've identified where the gaps are, as I've indicated earlier, because we do see that there are gaps in part of the city, and we'll work with them to fill those gaps. And that might be through other retailers under the Loblaw brand. It might be through community centers or libraries or perhaps another arrangement altogether.
Do you have other questions?
Sort of my last question is, it was a good report in terms of how comprehensive it was, but could you give me a summary of why this has taken, I've been on the board several years now, and I was. And things have slipped. I read in the report that the rollout has been shifting due to its complexity, and which I thought was an interesting way to phrase it. So my question to you is, can you give me a sort of a summary explanation for the delay in rollout?
Yeah, so this sort of very high level and very summary is that the infrastructure, we've had a lot of issues with the infrastructure provided by Metrolinx to support the fare products. Specifically, the Presto readers were very unreliable when they were rolled out. We were looking at 80%, 85% reliability, so that had to be resolved. The FMVD, this is the machine that's going to be in all the self-serves. That was only available with the TYSSE, and now we're rolling it out across the system. Okay. The AVMs, those loading machines that the first generation were also very unreliable, and now we're installing the second generation. So we didn't have very good infrastructure to support moving over. And so that's sort of delayed a lot of the decisions, or a lot of the rollout. And now, in 2018 and 2019, as I've said in response to a couple other questions, we're being cautious because we have that lived experience, and we want to make sure that before we start telling our customers passes are no longer available, tokens are no longer available, et cetera, that the infrastructure is in place, it works, it's at 99%, and so our customers can, ease of use around that's part of their customer experience.
So to be clear, the 3 infrastructure failures you identified are all ones where Metrolinx was responsible to deliver the equipment.
They were responsible under the contract to deliver that equipment.
Okay, thanks.
Second round, starting with Commissioner Mihevc.
Thank you. The only thing I'm going to focus on in the second round is who pays for what. So when I look at the page 41 of page 4 of 41, I note that while our budget estimates for 2019 for revenue, operations, and station collectors is $64.5 million. And noting that the reliability of the machines, both the machines that take the money and the machines that use to load up the money on the Presto card, they've had significant reliability issues over the years, over the past few years. It would seem to me that a big gap in this report is, maybe even with some legal input, is what do they owe us? Is our city and our riders responsible? Like there's $64 million there, plus oodles of millions. I think that's a technical term. Oodles of millions on the reliability issues. We need that number. I think we've been asking for it as a board for quite a while, and I don't see it here.
All right, through you, Mr. Chair, I'll handle this. I've had a number of discussions with Phil Verster, the CEO of Metrolinx, and in the last 4 to 6 months in our discussions on this topic, we both had agreed that the real focus of the Presto program should be identify this report, and for the first time we have a schedule laying out the next 18 months of all the deliverables for both organizations. There is the potential that they have claims against us as well, on top of our 1.4, I believe that is the number for them. So we've both agreed that we will take this offline, get the Presto program going, establish the schedule, move forward, and then come back and go over the, I'll say, debits and credits of the program.
Okay, so we will, as a board, receive a report on our perception, not their perception, our perception, legally supported, accounting-wise supported, as to what they owe us.
That is correct. There is a difference of opinion from the CEO of Metrolinx.
We're okay with that.
But we have agreed to disagree for right now and then come back. It likely will be late this year, early next year as well, as we're trying to wrap all these programs up.
Great. Okay,
we have not forgotten that.
I look forward to that report. Thank you.
Thank you. We won't be here.
Sorry? I might not be here, but that's okay.
Other questions? Commissioner De Laurentiis.
Thank you. Just to continue on the last question I wanted to ask, which is around the system performance. I didn't see the very granular customer experience analysis as part of what would feed into the assessment of the system. So again, it may be it's part somewhere, but. So let me ask that question first, and then I do have a motion I'd like to put forward on that point.
I'm sorry, what
So the granular experience of the individual, again, with this kind of technology, what we should be aiming for is an intuitive experience by the person that they barely have to think about it, right? The intuitive experience that we've had so far was you just throw your token in the box, or you wave your pass over the entrance. So we need to make this experience a lot more intuitive. Right now we've got lots of pieces to it, and until the success of new technology uptake is that I don't even have to think about using it, and I want to use it to the exclusion of everything else. So I think in order to get to that end state, what we should be doing is gathering information about all the negative experience. We get lots of really great feedback from the people who come to these meetings, but I'm sure there are lots of other people who are having experiences out there that are not reporting it. So we should have a deliberate approach where we are gathering that data, looking at it, examining it, and then asking ourselves the question, operationally, what could we be doing different? It could be as simple as, what do the instructions look like when we go on the website? I have to confess, when I go on the website, and I consider myself relatively literate when it comes to technology, I get confused. So we shouldn't have that. There's no reason to have that. And so I think the only way we can get around that we can eliminate that problem, is to deliberately gather the negative data, the bad experience, the unhappy experience, or just the frustrating experience, and looking at it and then asking ourselves the question, what could we be doing differently to eliminate this little, frustration or element? That's what I'm getting at.
And I think we 100% support that as we move forward and roll this out, 100%. So we have a whole customer experience department that is going to help us with customer journeys, talking to customers, understanding. We're actually considering working with Bridgeable, who helped us with the corporate plan, to go out and do some field testing of, for example, the 2-hour transfer and so on, to actually find out where those points of friction are and what we can do to resolve them. And we know that there are shared points of friction that TTC creates and that Metrolinx has created, and then there's, of course, the joint experience. So yes, 100%, and frankly, that's my job. So that's what we got to do.
I think I have you got my motion? Oh, okay. So we'll come back to that. Thanks.
Thank you. Other questions? Sorry, I have a few questions. And could I get the CEO, please? Commissioner Fragadakis, we need the CEO for some questions. He's kind of got a board meeting. He's got a board meeting he's at right now.
Talking transit.
Apologize.
Okay, my first question speaks to, and the CEO mentioned this, so this is the first time we've ever had, and I'm assuming an agreed upon schedule that, I don't know what happens at Metrolinx board meetings or whether they have them, or, but I'm assuming their board is seeing something similar to what's in front of us today, and they're kind of giving it their stamp of approval too?
I don't know their process. I know that you're correct, this is the first time we have a agreed upon schedule. That's why we're bringing it to the board. That's why we're giving it the profile it deserves, because it's now time to deliver and be held accountable for those deliveries.
But similarly, because I find it's only the TTC who's ever held accountable for Presto missteps. People in the room, the public, our customers, people in this building, based on this schedule, can also now hold Metrolinx accountable to deadlines they have committed to.
Correct.
Okay, so I don't have to read these as just TTC kind of deadlines.
This is a joint schedule.
Okay. I would ask why it's taken so long to come to a joint schedule like that, but maybe that's not worth it. One more specific item I want to get to, and it's not just because I have 3 kids, 12 and under, but I remember back in 2016 when we were told there was going to be a photo ID policy around that fare concession. I always struggled with the kind of the just practical implementation of that. Again, maybe because I live with these little creatures. I know that's put on hold, and I kind of respect that honesty about it, that we're saying we might not know the answer yet. And fair enough for someone older who has a concession, might have a driver's license or some other Ontario identification. Is there even any kind of sense of how we would have ID with that 12 and under concession?
So I think you've identified one of the challenges that we have been wrestling with, and it's children are going to be a challenge around asking for ID, even if you were to ask them in the system. So we know we have that challenge, and that's why one of the reasons we've put it on pause is the difficulty in implementing photo ID for children.
Okay, so at this point, that's just a question. There's not a leaning or two options we're looking at. It's one that we still just really have to explore pretty deeply.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. Okay, I think those are all my questions. Any other questions? I know there's a motion that Commissioner De Laurentiis wants to move, so maybe I'll have her speak first, and then I'll go to other speakers.
Thank you. So this is just, I won't repeat the arguments I was putting forward, just that I think there's an onus on us to make the Presto experience an intuitive one. And so in recognition of the intent of the staff and the management team and the board, I would have us adopt this this motion to really underline our commitment to create an intuitive experience.
Any questions of the mover? No. Other speakers? Commissioner Mihevc. I know.
Intuition there.
I know.
I knew something was cooking. Yeah. Well, this is it is a good report. If there is any, and I appreciate staff's comprehensiveness in putting it together. I think there's frankly, in the backdrop, in the context, is a kind of frustration with the way this has gone rolled out. Machines not working, people having difficulty accessing information when you go to the subway and you see some stations are just wide open for weeks on end. Presto is great. We love it when it's all working. But when this whole rollout has had a lot to be desired, I think. The fact that we have a schedule now, perhaps this puts us on a better path. For me, the big issue is accountability. Like, if it's on us, the next report, for example, it's on the fare gates. If it's on us, then we need to take responsibility and pay our bill and do the right thing. If it's on Metrolinx, then we have to be strong and hold them to account. They pushed the system on us. We wanted a slightly different, not a slightly, moderately different system at the beginning. They said we had to do it, so we're doing it with good faith. But they have to be held responsible for the pieces of this that are on them. And that is, I think, a weakness that we have right now in being thorough from a legal perspective and an accounting perspective on what is on them. And so, as this rolls out in the next year, I hope that we have something that's third-party adjudicated. Like, I don't know how we're going to arrive at the right number, but for heaven's sakes, I hope, staff, that we don't let Metrolinx frisk us at the end or have some negotiated settlement because they push us in a certain direction. We need to hold their feet to the fire and say the stuff that was yours, you have to pay for it. It's not on us. That's my input. Thank you.
Commissioner Fragedakis.
Yeah, I'll be brief in my remarks. I'm glad this report is here, but it's at the same time it's got some good information, and it's a bit depressing that we have a system that's forced on us, and then we're spending money to actually keep going with this single fare media because we're having problems with the technology that was imposed on us. Like, I find that, I don't know if other people do, but I certainly find that depressing, and we have better things that we could be spending our money on. But anyways, here we are, and obviously I'm supporting the recommendations before us. I certainly support Commissioner De Laurentiis' motion. I find that some of the things on the TTC are counterintuitive, but I'm certainly all about making the customer experience more intuitive.
Thank you. Commissioner Campbell.
Just a couple of things. I think the staff has done a good job of rolling this out, and I think generally speaking, I've noticed big improvements on the system in terms of the buses and the subway stations, in terms of the machines working. I think we're almost where we need to be. I really wish we were getting rid of the old Metro Pass sooner rather than later, but, that's why you hire staff, to be cautious, right? So I think that's probably not a bad thing because, in the end, you don't want customers more frustrated than perhaps they already are. So I think, we're going to be a better system once it's all fully implemented.
Any other speakers? I guess I'll move these staff recommendations. I'm going to speak, though. So I'll move the staff recommendations. I'll just say I've always wondered with Presto, and maybe because aspirationally we've hoped it would go smoother and better, but the reality is these implementations of these card systems are treacherous, really difficult processes that always are probably this complex, and people want to say it's gone off the rails or it's gone bad. This is just how these happen, and I think one of our missteps has been always trying to apologize away all these things and somehow pretend that it's all going swimmingly, where it's tough, it's very difficult, it's complex. We're an old system. We've got the jurisdictional issues of Metrolinx and the TTC, and I think probably we would have benefited, and everyone would have benefited from us being a little more open and honest with kind of some of the growing pains. The reality is that we're implementing this on the go. It's a live pilot in a sense, multi-year pilot of a new fare card system and a different way of people paying for their transit that's new, that's changed, where for the previous 100 years they've kind of transacted the same way as they've paid for transit. And so I think that we have to get away from that, and so part of that is to be honest and upfront with the challenges, because they should be expected, and guess what, there will be more, and I can guarantee you all these dates won't be met. But at least I can guarantee you, Commissioner Campbell, much to your chagrin and disappointment, but that's okay, because we're going to keep plugging away. We have to deal with this system. But at the same time, to Commissioner Mahevik's point, we are too often bearing the brunt of Metrolinx missteps. There is, again, I think a couple audience members here attend their meetings. They know the secret password so they can get into the palace and they can attend them. But, there's almost every issue that's been brought up today, from the distribution retail network to the delay in the one fare medium to all these things, has all been a result of Metrolinx missteps. And again, I don't fault them for that. It's tough, I get it, but we're the only ones explaining it away, and that just doesn't somehow match. So I'm pleased that we finally have this joint schedule that they've signed off on and own up to, and I would hope just as much as we hold them to task on that the members of the media, our public, know that they have to do the same too. Now, we're in a very different era now, and maybe there's changes in store for Metrolinx and how they operate and what the relationship is like with us. But having said that, we've got to kind of make sure that this new schedule is public, everyone recognizes it, and everyone knows where there are times where we screw up, fair enough, hit us for it. But at the same time, where Metrolinx has to own up, we need to be firm and clear on that too. So I moved the staff recommendations along with, and we have Commissioner De Laurentiis' amendment. So we'll vote on that amendment first. All in favor of Commissioner De Laurentiis' amendment? That carries. The motion as amended, or the remaining recommendations, all in favor? That carries. Which moves us to Presto Fairgates. This one you can blame on us. We have a deputant. Emily is here, signed up in advance. Our second last board meeting, and you're... So this is item 14, supply, installation, and maintenance of Fairgates for Presto. And...
So I'm going to use my favorite thing, the magic table, as I call it.
As you read. Go ahead. I'll start your time. You have 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Unfortunately, my tablet died before I could get it charged, so I didn't get to bring it today. So I can't show you the pictures I've been taking at the new subway stations, especially my little arch nemesis, York University. Simple as this. Why is it that there are 11 fare gates, only 2 of them are wheelchair accessible, only 1 of them is a Presto wheelchair accessible, and there's 2 banks of fare gates? So imagine this. on the right, where this hand is, with my curled fingers, Councillor Chair, please, thank you, is the one little set of fare gates between what would be a collector's booth and the elevator. And then from the elevator, the other side of the elevator to the other wall, there's 2 more sets of fare gates. Well, to access the other elevator to go to street level, you have to go all the way around the other end of the elevator, up through one of the other sets of fare gates. The fare gates would be much easier access, much quicker access, much safer access, so we wouldn't have to go through crowds. Gee, there's no accessible fare gate. Would be nice, TTC, if you thought about us as you do able-bodied. But I digress. Need we get into the point, like I did last time, about my little arch nemesis VMC with the elevators? But my big thing with the Presto fare gates is this. They break down all the time. There's so many stations with fare gates popped open or that are swinging like this, and it means wheelchair users can't get through them. So guess what I've had to do? I've had to blast through a few because they're half open and I can't get through, and there's no collector. The collector can't do a darn thing about it. And I admit, I've blown through a couple of sets of fare gates just because of that, because they're broken. How do I get through them? There's no longer a manual gate that I can open to get through when the gate's broken. Would have been nice for Presto to think about that. But the one biggest issue with Presto fare gates is this. When you're a Presto user or a CNIB card holder, which has a Presto chip in it, which is nice, it's nice to be able to use the fare gates, but when the only fare gate on the entire line that is A, wheelchair accessible, and B, Presto, is broken, or the Presto reader, there's no accessible Presto reader, St. Clair. It would be great if the collectors could actually control the fare gates, or have the opening beside the collector be wide enough for wheelchair users to use. Union Station is another issue. The back set of fare gates that go to Brookfield, half the time the wheelchair fare gate is blocked. Can't get through it. So what do? You have to go all the way around. The able-bodied ones are working. My other fare gate I hate is St. Andrew. They've got these lines, I don't know what you call them. They're like police systems with TTC logos on them, and they're to direct people. Well, they've got it beside the elevator. There's just enough space to get through with a wheelchair and not have to go all the way around, just enough space to go through with the wheelchair and go use the accessible fare gate. It's not the first one beside the elevator, it's the second one. Well, right now, they have those cordon things done so that only able-bodied people can get to the fare gate. Wheelchair users have to go all the way around, not around the little pole and around, no. They've got a cordon going all the way out towards the escalators, which means you've got to go all the way around, go through crowds, go through the anxiety-inducing subway crowds, because they don't care. People will run right through you. I've had it happen numerous times. And it would be great if these Presto fare gates had been done with a little more intelligence towards people with disabilities. It would have been great if ACAT were more involved in this. ACAT didn't see the final design until it was done. We weren't kept in the process. No one with disabilities was kept in the forefront of this process. And I don't say this against just TTC. I blame Metrolinx. Their accessibility meetings are closed. So how can any of us go to their accessibility meetings to keep fire under their butts? How do we keep their feet to the fire and keep them honest when we don't know what's going on? And we're not the only ones. The disabled community is up in arms about Presto, because the website still isn't accessible. The new Presto fare machines are not properly accessible.
Wrap up, please.
Thank you.
Thank you.
But Chair Cole, I will say this, and I'll say this now. I am sick and tired of TTC not holding Presto to account for their BS for people with disabilities. Please, let's get this done. Let's stop the BS. Let's stop the infighting the way we are with York Region and the elevators at VMC. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Questions? No, there are no questions. Thank you for your presentation. I think that was the only one on that item. So we'll move to questions of staff. Commissioners have questions? Commissioner Fragakis, then Mihevik.
I have a question. I mean, I don't know, I was just chatting with Commissioner De Laurentiis about this. I mean, the deputant just described something that to me sounds like a quality assurance job. Don't we have somebody that goes around to see if all of these things that works for the TTC, to see if these things work and if they are accessible? I mean, I don't know what the title of that job would be. Perhaps tester would be a good title. I'm not sure.
So I can speak generally to that. We've had extensive consultations with ACAT with respect to the rollout of Presto and have made many, many improvements based on their advice. I think that the deputant was speaking to some of the passive travel at some of the stations, and I think we admit that we need to go back and take a look at that. I specifically know what Emily is speaking about at St. Andrew, and we'll have to go back and take a specific look at that. So we work with our stakeholders, and when things come to our attention, we are on it to make sure that the accessibility is upheld.
So what I mean, that's a reactive. I'm wondering if we have anyone on staff that's a little more proactive to identify the problems before they become a frustration for people, in particular vulnerable people with disabilities.
So I can say that when it comes to station design and the location of the accessible gates, right from the beginning, we do sit through our EC&E group and our building codes and identify the ideal locations for where accessible gates would be located. And if there are specific physical impediments to that location, then we go to the next best in terms of advanced planning. Secondly, when it comes to station inspection, we do have our station supervisors going through and on a proactive basis at start of service, checking for exactly this kind of condition. So if there's a gate that's designed to work in a particular way and it's detected at the beginning of service, then we will make those arrangements. Admittedly, sometimes things come undone in the middle of service, and we do depend on feedback from the janitor, the collector, or the customer, and we do react in those particular ways. And finally, when it comes to the stanchions, there are a number of locations in the system where TTC staff have put stanchions in to assist with crowd flow and control. But in any event where those stanchions are impeding accessibility for all, it's a priority for us to fix those. So I'm very interested in what the deputant has to say, and we will follow up to get specifics of those locations.
Thank you.
Commissioner Mihevik.
Yes, thank you very much. So just so I'm clear, the contract with Metrolinx is we are responsible for the supply of the fare gates, both for the legacy system and for the new system. Is that correct?
So the Fairgate contract is between TTC and S&B.
S&B, for both sides of that operation. Legacy fare media, so I tap with my Metrolinx.
Oh, correct, yes, yes. If you're using your pass versus the Presto card.
Okay, and then also the installation, that's on us as well?
So the installation is on us, and we're sharing some of the civil works costs with Metrolinx.
But they're responsible for the electronic portion, aren't they? The reader that allows them to collect the fare. What's the division of labor and responsibility there?
So the readers belong to us as well. They are integrated into the gates. Basically, the whole of the gate belongs to TTC. So we're maintaining that, and basically we service that. We have a contract with S&B to help us maintain that as well.
Okay, so why are we, if they're our responsibility and they weren't reading appropriately, why are we blaming Metrolinx for that?
The readers on the gates are actually very reliable. You may be referring to other equipment.
Periods when they weren't. We were going after S&B for that, not Metrolinx.
Yeah, those issues were with S&B.
Oh, I see. But they're our responsibility,
yes.
Beginning, middle, and end.
Yes.
But that money goes to an account with Metrolinx and then apportioned appropriately.
Correct.
I see. Okay, thank you. I appreciate this.
Thank you. Commissioner De Laurentiis?
What responsibilities do we put on SNB to resolve the operational glitches with Presto and Metrolinx before installation? Like, because I see under the agreement in terms of supply and installation, there's a whole range of issues that we hold them responsible to. But to what extent are you satisfied that they are doing what is appropriate to do all the pre-testing and resolving of glitches beforehand?
So yes, there's actually a very extensive pre-testing regimen that we go through. They do testing on their equipment when they manufacture it, as well as once we bring it here to Canada, we set the entire Fairline up in an off-site facility, do all of our testing, run through different tests. We have a whole test regimen that we go through. Then when we bring it into the station, once it's installed, we go through those tests again. Not quite as extensive, but pretty much the same tests in order to do kind of a sanity check before we commission them and put them into service.
Would we have sort of a failure rate that we would specify that is appropriate in our contract with them?
On initial installation, there's no real failure rate. It's before we put them into service that they're running 100%. So there's no really failure rate. Yes, we find different problems with different Fairlines as we've installed them for different reasons, manufacturing or installation or whatever it is. But once they go into service, every gate that goes into service is at 100% when it starts. It should be running.
Would you consider creating a failure rate upon installation? Which, it's from a technology point of view, we're giving you software and hardware. You can create certain conditions during a test that can be relatively optimum. But it's, making sure then that once it's installed, is there any element of that within the contract? Or could we consider putting it in there?
Chris, can you speak to the SLA?
Yes.
The standards of the SLA?
So we do have a current SLA that's being ready to sign right now, which does actually hold them accountable for availability of the fare gates. So what they do is basically after installation.
Okay, good.
So we basically monitor it ongoing, and at a certain percentage, there's service credits that are credited back to TTC based on what their availability is to the public.
Okay, good.
Questions of staff on this item? I'll just ask, so in front of us right now, we're exercising an option. Were the financial terms of this option originally negotiated when we first signed the deal with them, whenever that was? I don't know, back in, I don't know what year that would have been, 2015?
So they were negotiated, actually, they were ongoing 2015 and 2016. So they weren't there when we first originally signed the contract. They were in work at the time.
But so long before, say, today with this report, or whenever this report was prepared, we knew the price and range at which we would have to exercise the option? Like, did we always know there was a $55 million expense coming our way when we agreed to what our deal with SMB back in 15?
So the answer to that is yes.
Okay. What's their performance been like since kind of the initial problems we were having in terms of the gates operating and the hardware and all that stuff?
Well, the board's well aware of what the initial problems were. They have been steadily improving. So we're at about 96.5% availability as of last month. It's actually improving now. We continue to work with the supplier, SMB. We're doing software upgrades. We're doing hardware upgrades. We found a few issues with motors and so on. They're being addressed by SMB. We're replacing those right now as we fail, but we're putting together a program to actually go and wholesale replace them across the commission. So there are a number of growing pains that we're going through. But the gates seem to be, their availability and their reliability seems to be improving.
Was there ever an effort to negotiate a different option price based on their inability to deliver for those periods, because we must, or even if we can make some assumptions, be able to, kind of quantify, the cost to us, beyond reputational and all those issues and customer service impacts. There's got to be a financial impact of, X amount of gates being open for that much time, people coming through, us not collecting that revenue. And so I wonder, with the amount we're being asked to approve today, was there an effort to get a better number, negotiate that number based on their lack of performance and our lost revenue since the first contract was agreed upon?
So there was never an agreement about lost revenue. It's always been based on the availability of the gates. That's what all the negotiations were right from the start. So, so the answer is no.
Okay, so then is there a breakdown of this 54.7? Like how do we come to that number?
That number is based on actually several sheets of different data, basically on different options, shouldn't say options, different services that SMB is providing to us, including like spare parts, technical advice, service, call-in service desk, back-end servers, and so on.
But that's not for, so it's for kind of maintenance and service over a time period, so like 9 years, till 2025?
Till
Service till
2025.
2025. And then it's actually for physical parts and components on top of that too?
Yes.
Okay, but not additional gates?
But not additional gates, no.
Okay.
For the maintenance portion of this, no.
No. Okay, so this is purely a maintenance, principally a maintenance contract?
Yes.
Okay. Is there a breakdown? Is it the same every year? Does it escalate? Does it decline over the time period of the maintenance contract?
It's generally the same. There's a CPI increase every year.
Okay.
As part of the contract, but in generally it's based on number of units in production.
So it's number of units in production, and then what's the average yearly maintenance cost then, based on assuming we have all the units operating?
5.8, 5.9 million.
So, sorry, just under $6 million a year?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Other questions or speakers? Speak? Okay, anyone want to move staff recommendations? Moved by Commissioner Lalonde. All those in favor? That carries. Item number 16, I believe, is next on the agenda for us. And we do have a couple speakers. Emily Daig, who I know is here, or was. Oh, she had to leave. Is Peter Athanasopoulos here? Oh, there's Peter. So this was a late request, so if I could just have a motion from Commissioner DeBearmaker to vary the order paper and to add that. All in favor? That carries. Where? Welcome. I'll start your time. You have 5 minutes. It'll be up on the clock there. Go ahead.
Great. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I know it was last minute. I'd like to make the board aware that I'm here representing Spinal Cord Injury Ontario, which is a non-for-profit charity representing a broad disability group of 1.9 people with disabilities across Ontario. When this was brought to our attention from our membership, we were quite concerned that the TTC is considering rear vehicle versus its current standard of side entry vehicles as a best practice standard for delivering TTC services. From a safety perspective, we highly do not recommend that the TTC move forward to rear view vehicles. We don't feel that this is a safe route. We do not feel that it is a comfortable ride, nor should be in any way considered. We recognize that these rear vehicles are used for on-demand services and for private services. We welcome the opportunity that in a private business you have the right to risk, but for a publicly funded service through tax-paying dollars, we must maintain the highest level of safety and quality standard for the services that we provide. And currently, you're providing the global best practice standard, and consideration to digress from that is concerning to our community. So we encourage this council, this board, to not move forward with rear entry if that's in any way consideration. And I recognize that the intelligence of the City of Toronto staff have also endorsing that the side entry is the more appropriate level of vehicle for TTC services. So I wanted to bring that to this board. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. You do have one question at least from Commissioner DeBearmaker, so just hold tight.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you very much for coming in today. Your submission to us is that for TTC-operated vehicles, let's call them wheel-trans vehicles,
yeah,
that we should only be, I'll say, keeping our side entry. Don't allow, say, us as a public institution to go to the other doors because side entry is better for so many reasons, correct?
Yes.
That's what you're saying?
Yes.
Do you also think that when we hire private vehicles that we should have the same standard?
I do believe
the
so.
Service.
I absolutely do believe so. Like, I'd like to see a plan over time for even private services to be moving towards a side entry vehicle. I just think, honestly, it feels like you're driving in a trunk in a rear vehicle. It's very bumpy. You're in the back. It's not safe. The belts kind of go over your neck at some points. If there is an accident while you're in those rear vehicles, the risk of serious injury and liability is greater than it would be if you're in the center of a vehicle, more protected, and honestly experiencing a better ride.
Is it your opinion, because I've talked to a number of drivers over the years, but are you aware or do you believe that a number of private sector drivers want, it, to be blunt, the cheaper vehicle because it's cheaper for them?
I think that's the politics around all of this. It's not safety and user experience. It's literally the cost of the vehicle, and that's why these recommendations are put forward.
So if the city wanted to use the safest vehicles, and it did cost more even in the private sector, that's something that we should work out with the vendors. We shouldn't give you, if you will, the second-class vehicle just because it's a private company delivering the service versus a wheel-trans vehicle.
Absolutely.
So side entry is side entry, safe is safe.
Yes.
You want side entry, you don't want the sloppy seconds.
Absolutely.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you for that, Commissioner DeBearmaker. Other questions for this deputant? No, thank you for coming. Thanks very much. Questions of staff? Commissioner DeBearmaker to start.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, is it your opinion as well that some of the private contractors want not side entry doors because it is a cheaper option for them? Do you think economics drive their decisions? Or maybe the same question, different way. Why isn't everybody using side entry doors?
Through the chair, our research was focused primarily on the taxi cabs, the licensed taxi cabs in the City of Toronto. We weren't expanding out beyond that for the purpose of this document because it focuses on our contract, which is just for taxi cabs only.
So if it was, in your professional opinion, should we as a commission migrate towards having side entry accessible vehicles only, regardless of whether we contract it out or whether we have it in-house?
As an operator, which is my profession, not a vehicle engineer, I would state that our preference from our customers loud and clear is for these side entry vehicles, and with our job being customer service first and also safety, that we can combine those two nicely in a side entry vehicle.
And do you believe the side entry door vehicles are safer vehicles?
Yes, our research of that shows that to be the case.
Okay, and it's maybe it may be going off topic a titch, but when we looked at our operators and some of the private sector operators, what's the percentage of women working in using these vehicles, the side entry vehicles? Do you have a rough percentage?
I think it's less than 0.00. We did a search of the MLS, and there's 2 female drivers right now working that are licensed as taxi cab drivers in the city.
Of how many licensed drivers, roughly?
500.
5,000?
No, yeah, approximately
5,000, if my memory. So out of 5,000 licenses that, well, again, I'm not sure if they're all doing Wheel-Trans, but so what you're saying is certainly less than 1% is a round number are women.
That's correct.
And did you find any I'll say innate reason why somebody must be of the male gender to operate these vehicles and help our passengers get on and off?
No, sir. Certainly, TTC employs female drivers as well, and they operate and function and serve Wheel-Trans customers the same as their male counterparts do.
Yeah. So I know again, I know this may be getting ahead to next month's report, but if this commission was to have the same desire as the City of Toronto in terms of our firefighters, our police officers, our bus drivers, to have some better gender equity, maybe a little titch higher than 1% women in the workforce, could you help us prepare or put something in a contract that would encourage us to diversify our or contractor, well, I guess a contractor's workforce?
Through the chair, we are certainly looking at all options and what is appropriate to put in the RFP for bidders. That will be coming to the board next month in deciding. We're also taking our advice from the Auditor General as to how specific we need to be, as well as independent consultants on how we need to include the appropriate language in our contracts.
Okay, those are my questions. I'll speak briefly at the appropriate time.
Okay, other questions? Motions? Speak? By Sense One Brewing.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Chair. I'll just move receipt of the report. I'm very glad it's here. I think I had requested this report, I'll say a number of years past, because I believe there was, certainly in the private sector, a desire to go to the cheaper vehicles because for the owner-operator or for the investor, if you're a taxi plate owner, it's cheaper for you to get a used vehicle, retrofit it, and put it out on, on the road to pick up our passengers. But the vehicles are cheaper, and they are not safe vehicles to use. So I'm very glad that our staff, and again, it took a report to get to us just to confirm this debate, because most of us would say, well, it's very obvious that the side door entry is much better for our customers and it's safer for them. And certainly I think our first priority has to be safety. So to see this report validating everything that many of us have said about the safety of our passengers is great. We'll have to look at when our contract comes up next time to make sure that the private sector people, if it costs, I'm sure I didn't ask the staff the question, I think it might cost an extra $10,000 a vehicle. So for the sake of saving $10,000, let's just know $1,000 something amortized over the 7-year contract that they can, is it 8 years now? 8 years? Yeah, 8,000. It's 8,000. So I'll call it peanuts over the life of the vehicle. But we human beings and some of the investors think in a short-term way. They'll get the cheapest vehicle possible because their number one priority isn't safety of our passengers. It's how they maximize the profit by providing the service. And I don't fault people for wanting to maximize profit. That's what they're supposed to do. But we as a public corporation are supposed to set the standard that protects people. And I find it inconsistent that we have one standard because we know the truth, we know these vehicles are safer, and yet through our contracts that people bid on, we let them use what I will describe as substandard vehicles. So I hope this is going to be changed as well, Mr. Chair. I find in this day and age, if we talked about the diversity of our workforce, we certainly need to make changes on many, many fronts. But if you look at the taxi industry, people might chuckle and say, diversity, how could you get more diverse in the taxi industry? If they were in this room, there would be every culture on the planet represented. And I would say, yes, that's very true. but there won't be any women show up. Maybe the 2 in the entire fleet might show up, but when you have an industry where our staff say 0.0001% of the operators are women, there is absolutely no need for that. We have police officers. Again, when I was young, it was, police officers were all male, bus drivers were all male, firefighters were all male. It's not that way anymore. We have women who are in the police force who do just as good a job as their male counterparts, and probably better as well as our fire department, as well as our bus operators. In every conceivable field, we're making progress. Why we would be stuck and why we would give out award contracts to people who, in my opinion, are discriminating on gender is beyond me. So we'll have to see what we can legally or not legally do in terms of the bids, but I think certainly there have to be goals to say to the industry, let's have a revolution. Instead of having 1% women drivers, why don't we have 2% women drivers? You would double the number of women in your fleet by hiring 2 more. It's a bit of an embarrassment in this day of age, but I hope we can help migrate to a better, more balanced, and I would think healthier set of drivers as well. Because I think if we had a lot more women in that field, I think we would have a lot more better service as well. So, Mr. Chair, I'll wait and see the report next month, but I just wanted to give a heads up because the 2 reports are sort of related. This one came first. But we need to protect people and we need to have a diverse workforce. We need to give everybody a fair chance at making money. Thank you.
Okay, so you are moving the motion to receive. All in favor of receipt? No, none opposed. That carries. Item number 20 is next, and we do have a deputant for that. This is the Young Subway Extension Tunnel Design Award, and Hamish Wilson is here to speak on that. And I'm just going to mention to commissioners that we're kind of at bare quorum here, so, okay, stay put. Okay, welcome. I'll start your 5 minutes. Go ahead whenever you're ready.
Well, thank you again. I would urge that you don't do a thing with this apart from rejecting it and not going ahead with it. We need triage. I think the system is creaking and groaning so badly, we cannot add more line, more extension onto the overloaded Bloor, or onto the Bloor-Yonge intersection, onto Yonge Street, and by corollary onto Danforth as well. So I really think it's kind of stupid to be extending the subway system further. We need new corridors. It should be on surface somehow. Just to do it cheaper and faster, and to go north up to Richmond Hill, that seems like it's a regional service and regional demand. So let's not do the regional, make the stressed subway become a regional carrier when in fact it is not working for the locals and the sub-regionals so well. And so you have to wonder at what point is there going to be liability to the system and to the taxpayers for the overload if something happens. I wonder if there's any personal liability on the directors here of the commissioners for continuing to overload. Is transit and public mobility, is it a service and a benefit to people, or is it a means to actually prime the development pump? And if it is the prime the development pump, surely it's the downtown areas and the rest of the City of Toronto that should be given the consideration rather than adding on to things. And I know we've said we're now embarked into a new era at Queen's Park. Forwards was backwards, and I fear for the Conservatives having a lot of slash and burn. But it is a GO service that should be being provided here, not a TTC one to go north. There are options to do better things with GO. There is the Richmond Hill GO line. There was a suggestion here in the Smart Ride LRT of using some of the Don Valley Parkway going north. And I didn't bring it down, so I have to use this. In the 1994 Appendix B of the Metro Official Plan, there was something from Front Street getting up to Eglinton. When that's the sort of thing that you should be thinking about doing.
Tunnel design.
Yes,
Tunnel design.
but it is a stupid thing to do.
Okay, tunnel design.
It is a stupid thing to do.
How wide it is.
It is
how
stupid to actually extend the subway any
Well, I
further
appreciate
north.
your map again, as always.
You need surface relief. I didn't bring down the go surface. It is cheaper. It is faster. We need to have something that bleeds off Eglinton. When the Eglinton comes in...
Chairman, the deputant is out of order.
Okay, well, I think you guys are mismanaging the system by extending the subway any further north. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions of staff? Commissioner Mahevik.
Is there any city money, even $5, that is going into this work?
Through the chair, there is no city money or TTC funds going into this project.
Why are we doing the work as opposed to York Region?
We are the operator of the system, and through our agreement, we are the project manager of the line extension, but only for the planning, design, and preliminary engineering of the line. We're advancing both the relief line and the Young Subway extension. The relief line is a bit ahead of the Young Subway extension. And we have a MOU that we entered into with York Region, the City of Toronto, and Metrolinx. It's entirely funded by Metrolinx and York Region through their PTIF contributions, so we also have PTIF deadlines to be mindful of.
Thank you. That's it.
Other questions? To speak, do you want to restate your questions in a speech?
No,
okay.
Staff have articulated that
I think they
why
have
we're doing this.
perfect. I think they have perfectly. All those in favor? Staff recommendation, that carries unanimously. Item number 23, I had held outstanding board items, and it was mostly because Commissioner Mahevik wasn't here. And I don't know if I know him better than he knows this.
No. I'm good, thank you.
You're okay?
We worked it out.
Okay. Okay, so that's for information, moved by Commissioner DeBeermaker that we receive that for information. All those in favor, that carries. Item number 25, we do have a deputant. This is a notice of motion from Commissioners Fragadakis and Heisey. And, oh, sorry, she just stepped out. Can we just, if you don't mind, because I know you're going to be on it. Yeah. Okay, so let's, sorry, do you mind if we just hold off on that and table it till the commissioner's back? Then we would move to item number 26, which is the new streetcar program, RFI, and this is an information item. Questions of staff, starting with Commissioner Mahevik.
Yes, so if I'm reading this right, and if I'm intuiting this right, we have a decision to make over the 60 vehicles. And the issue is, one, which supplier, and two, when we make the decision. So let me ask you this with respect to the second issue, is if we make the decision in the new year, my worry, frankly, who am I speaking with, just so I know my dialogue? Okay. Are we at risk of further delays of new vehicles if we make the decision, really, frankly, 6-7 months from now?
I want to apologize when I was talking with Susan. So
there are two sets of issues here. One is, do we need 60 more vehicles? I think the answer to that is yes. And the question becomes, who is the manufacturer going to be? I get that. And then the third question, I guess, is the timing. And my question is why not have the timing sooner rather than later, given the kinds of lead times, given the fact that at the end of 2019, it's coming fast upon us. It's only a year and a half away. Manufacturers need a lot of lead time to basically do it. And given that it's an information item, should we not be looking to you for guidance and us to kind of collaborate to make a decision sooner rather than later?
Okay, I can answer that through you, Mr. Chair. So the answer is yes, we do need the 60 new vehicles sooner than later as identified in the report. I've had discussions with Bombardier as recently as last night regarding the delivery of the existing fleet and the time frame to get all the 204 vehicles here by the end of 2019, which is still their commitment. The 89th vehicle will be shipping later on this month, so they'll be very close to the meeting of the commitment for this quarter. They would like to exercise the option sooner than later. I've been very clear to them all along that they have to meet the commitments of the delivery schedule first, as well as the reliability of the vehicle, before I could recommend giving them an extension. They've said sooner than later. I've said the soonest I'd be willing to recommend an extension would be early in the first quarter of next year. A lot of it is what they're trying to do is tie in to their manufacturing with the Kingston facility, getting to a point where they could deliver 20 vehicles a year. A quarter, which they have not done as of yet, which is what they're striving to do. They believe that they could deliver those 60 vehicles through 2020, prior to 2021, but it would take through 2021 or into 21 if we give them exercise the option next year. So for them, it's all about materials management and building the vehicles.
If we do 2019, we lose 6 months. Should we be making? Should we be making the decision next month so that if it's a new manufacturer, they have 6 more months to figure it out? If it's Bombardier, they have 6 more months. They have 6 additional months to basically deliver on a more reasonable timeline.
So in the report, it gives an outline of a delivery schedule for the potential if we put an RFP on the street and go out to bid. Some of the manufacturers openly discuss or openly state they can deliver it a lot faster than our schedule. Yeah. I have a little heart agita when I hear people talk like that, knowing the complexities of building vehicles and building them and integrating them into a system. That being said, I still want Bombardier to meet the commitments that they've already committed to. We're only 2 quarters into this delivery schedule of getting 16 a quarter. Right? If they really want to build up to 20 a quarter, they have to demonstrate they can get that with Kingston. And it's coming, as the report says, it's coming along very nicely. But I'm from Missouri, the show me state. I want to see what you can actually do, and the reliability as well. We've seen some consistent improvements in reliability, but we're still only halfway there.
Okay, last question. So let's say we do go with our recommendation and make the decision early in 2019. Do we lose any options? Do we lose money by virtue of not making use of the existing provisions of the current contract?
I'll let you discuss. You've been having the financial discussions with them.
Yeah, so right now there is options for up to 100 streetcars, as the report mentions, and the options price is held to July of this year. I believe, so the answer directly is yes, we would forego that pricing. We wouldn't be able to secure that pricing necessarily, but I think that they know what the market is as well and what they'd be competing for in the event that they try to kind of overcharge us for any additional vehicles. And in the end, we would always have the option to go out if they did try to do that.
So should we be asking for a report next month on what the delta would be between deciding in July and deciding in the likely delta between deciding in July and deciding in the new year, so that we can get a good vehicle at a reasonable cost, using or not using the existing contract?
I think it'll be a good vehicle at a reasonable cost. I'm actually going to look at Steve Conforti if I could, because part of the discussion also has to be, as we prepare the 2019 capital budget, the allocation of funding and being brought in over the 10-year period of time to accommodate 2020, 2021 deliveries. Did I say that correctly, Steve? So that still has to be addressed?
Yeah, through the chair. So as part of the 2019 budget process, we'd have to identify the funding and make it available for the procurement of the additional vehicles, which are currently sitting as an unfunded below-the-line item.
Okay, I'll come back to you. Okay, Commissioner Unan Wong.
Could we put out an RFP just for the purposes of getting the results back, subject to the funding being available? So let's say we can say we're going to pick this vendor. The funding's not available yet, but this is the vendor we're going to choose. It's a procurement issue, I guess.
Yeah, technically you can. I'm not sure that it's recommended practice because typically you want to make sure the funding is there.
Sorry, I didn't hear you.
I'm not sure that it's recommended practice because you want to make sure that the funding is there and that you have the intent to award that contract at the end of the RFP. You usually use the RFI for that kind of exploratory.
We've already done the RFI, right? But, speaking to Commissioner Mahevik's idea of we don't want to lose any time, that would be a reasonable option to put it out on the street, get the responses back, and then we could sort of know which one we're going to go with. That's possible, yes?
It's possible.
It's not a normal practice, right?
It's not normal practice, and there is quite a bit of work that needs to be done in preparation of an RFP. So I think that to meet the intent of Mahevik's, Councillor Mahevik's
you said quite a bit of work on our part, or the vendor's part?
Sorry about that?
You said there's quite a bit of work to be done.
For us, even.
For us.
Already, yes.
But we'd have to do it
Yes, exactly.
Anyway,
so what we could do is advance that work so that we're ready earlier on in 2019. Because you see there's a portion of work that talks about evaluating and taking lessons learned and updating a specification, and that's in the timeline that's laid out in the report. So that portion of work we could advance so that we reduce the kind of loss of time that you're...
So you could start doing that now?
That portion, yeah, the lessons learned and spec development, yes.
So we could give that direction as required then? To start preparing the documents to put in an RFP, yes?
Through you, Mr. Chair, you could, knowing the quantity of staff that you have available working on the existing projects, as we've discussed more recently, we'd have to get an additional staff in there to help.
We'd have to get additional staff and consultants on board to do that for sure.
Yes. So just getting back to the vendors for a second. So the vendor that we have now is how many streetcars behind from the original?
From the original, I'm not sure. In this year, they're
2 years. Pardon me? 2 years.
I'm going to say in the area of 75 vehicles, probably.
Yeah, I think that's
from the 86 or 82 that we have on property now, it's probably in the 150 range.
Yeah, we have 83 on property as of today. Yes.
Right, and so I'm going to ask some questions I know the answer because we were in the same meeting, but I think the commissioners should know. We met with one of the vendors, one of the Chinese vendors, yes?
That's correct.
And so they actually were prepared. They told us that it would take them 18 months to build to spec the first LRV. Is that right?
The prototype vehicle, yes, they did.
And then to build, well, we believe Bombardier. And to build the remaining 59 or 99, how long did they say it would take them?
They said it would take an additional 6 months.
So they offered, they said that they could build and they're also building subway cars for Chicago, yes? $1.8 billion contract for Chicago. So they could give us our streetcars from 2 years from signing the RFP.
They say they can, yes, and that's why we recommended as part of the next steps in this report to engage in a third-party consultant to validate those responses.
Right, and they said that they would meet the Canadian content requirements, right?
Yes.
I see. And actually, our response was that's we probably wouldn't want them that fast. Isn't that what we said?
What was that? Sorry.
We couldn't use them that quick. If we signed the contract today, we couldn't use them. So that would be, so let's say it would be July 2020.
Yeah. So I think the question at the time was if we could get them today. Would that not be better than waiting the full duration? And the answer is we couldn't accommodate additional 60 today because we've got retrofits required to our existing car houses as well as the provision for additional storage out of Hillcrest just to accommodate the 60. So we do need some time to prepare for the 60.
Oh, so it's for the car storage. But we could, so there is an arrangement where we could get those extra streetcars fairly quickly if we decided to do this. No, just put it out in the street and get the bids back. Oh, let me...
All right, we'll come back to you if there...
Okay, yeah, sure.
Well, if there are no other questions, we'll keep going. But are there questions?
A couple more.
Go ahead.
So the price that was quoted, the original streetcar was, that we bought, it was the sticker price was $6 million a copy, right?
Yes.
And so they're offering, on the exercise of the option, they're offering $4.5 million, right?
It's 3.6 million is the options pricing.
Oh, so they come down?
No, it was 3.6 million plus
3.6.
escalation and taxes.
But the other vendors there, we'd actually go out and see if they could actually better that price.
That would be one of the intents behind an RFP, yes.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks. Others? Can anyone beat 18 months?
Don't think.
To speak? Or questions? What do you? Okay, go ahead.
I'm not sure I'm on the same page as Commissioner Minden-Wong, but maybe we are on the same page in as much as we should do a little deeper dive next month and ask staff to do a little deeper dive to see whether we should pull the trigger in July or wait till the new year. There is some options. We have an existing contract. Maybe there is some merit. I'm not sure if staff can do the work in a month's time, but really we're butting up against an election. And I'd hate to see the window close and then 6 months down the road, us figure out that we should have ordered earlier and exercised an option on an existing contract or gone out to tender, I guess. So that's where perhaps we're in agreement. So I guess my motion is just to forward this.
There's no motion. This is for information.
Can't I move a motion to put it on as an action item next month?
You'd have to defer the report for that purpose. To
Defer the report for that purpose, and then orally, so that would be the motion, but then ask staff to help us do a deeper dive to make a good decision next month as to whether to pull the trigger or wait the extra 6 months. That's my suggestion. And
deferral
for a month, which was a way of saying it's an action item next month.
Speak? Or just...
Isn't the only way we're going to pull the trigger is if we have an RFP responded to? Right? In what world would we say, let's go ahead and exercise the options without having got quotes from other people?
Well, right now, we're not even going out for an RFP. We might decide next month to go out for the RFP. We might decide to go with Bombardier. We might decide to wait 6 months. I think those are the three options that we should consider more deeply.
And I guess I'm just questioning, is it really an option to go with Bombardier's option if you haven't done an RFP? Right? For us to around the table think, yeah, we think it's the best deal. I don't know, I wouldn't be willing to sign up for that.
Well, I'm not suggesting which option is best. I'm suggesting that we do a deeper dive on each of the three. I guess the three options are wait 6 months, do an RFP, exercise our options with the existing contract. Those are the three. And rather than let kind of time just mosey along, that we make a conscious decision that we're waiting, we're not waiting, and if we're not waiting, we're going this route or this route.
So I guess maybe my question is, how quickly could we do an RFP? What's the opportunity there?
Well, we can't ask that of staff now, just because where we are in the proceedings of the meeting, but I think it's understood by staff that that would be some of the analysis that this would come back with. And I think the question to you as the mover was, do you recognize that probably it would make the most sense to go to an RFP first to get those data and those numbers and pricing before you could even make a decision, so sequentially
it could be
on Bombardier?
It could be.
Okay.
But I'd rather make that decision in July.
You just want to get all of that moving quicker so we can make those decisions.
Correct.
Even if it's in that sequence.
Correct.
His motion is to defer this item. Okay, all in favor? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I'm going to vote in favor of it. We can agree with the deferral. Maybe we may have some disagreement from there. I fundamentally believe that we should go out to an RFP. Sole sourcing is never the right way to go. And I would underscore that in this particular arrangement. I would be very opposed to given Bombardier's past conduct. They haven't earned the right in any way. They haven't even come close to the idea of given their past performance and the way they've treated the transit riders in the city. They have not earned the right for sole source by any stretch of the imagination. I think it's great. Usually you hear this arrangement where no one would be interested in an order of 60 or 100 because making the first one is just not economical. We now know that that argument no longer holds water. There's another vendor there. I think it's useful to look at other vendors. I mean, this is, by and large, I think that we should be looking for the best product at the best price. And if there's someone who's prepared to build to our spec and at a cheaper price, we should be pursuing that. And it's also useful to know that this time thing is not a factor anymore, that in fact there are vendors there that could probably beat our current vendors' production times. So that means that actually maybe puts, at least for this piece of the order, that puts the TTC back in the driver's seat, and that's kind of a nice place to be because we haven't been there for quite some time.
So let's unanimously vote on the deferral. All in favor? That carries. Item number, we'll move back to 25 on community concerns and bus routes on local roads, review and consideration of the use of electric vehicles. Questions of staff? Oh, we do have a deputy. Sorry. Is he still here?
He's there.
Oh, okay. Please, go ahead.
Some people have asked why I make deputations on routes throughout our city. Well, I've lived all over our city. I've lived and worked in Scarborough. I've lived and worked in Etobicoke. I've lived in Old Toronto as well as all the Yorks. And for 3 years, I lived in this bus corridor. Because I prefer to have a seat whenever possible in the TTC, I would start my southbound trip by going north and looping around the portion of the route north of Bloor. The 75 Sherbourne bus has 44 stops to make a complete north-south trip. 11 of these stops are north of Bloor. Intermixed amongst these 11 stops north of Bloor are multi-million-dollar homes, not merely million-dollar homes like the rest of Toronto, but multi-million-dollar homes. The cost per unit per housing unit goes down considerably as you go south on Bloor on the 75 Sherbourne bus. From my 3 years of taking this route daily, I noticed that most of the passengers that got on the stops north of Bloor tend to be more employees of the multi-million-dollar homes than actual owners of multi-million-dollar homes. Residents, this is from the motion, of a neighborhood north of Bloor have raised concerns over safety and noise and air quality resulting from more 75 buses. I can tell you the people south of Bloor on this route are not as concerned about these facts. This is not the first time that owners of multi-million-dollar homes along the TTC routes have tried to invoke transit NIMBYism on the TTC. I find it offensive that a group of multi-million-dollar homeowners can get a motion like this brought before the board. This is transit NIMBYism at its economic worst. It is important that citizens of Toronto know where the TTC board members stand on the subject of transit NIMBYism in Toronto. This is the second last board meeting before the election. I would ask that you reject this motion, and I would even ask for a recorded vote. If you're not willing to have a recorded vote, then I would hope members of the press would be paying attention to see how each TTC board member voted on the subject of transit NIMBYism in Toronto. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for our deputant? There are none. Thank you very much. Questions of staff? Beginning with Commissioner Fragedakis. Oh, okay. Any questions of staff to speak? Commissioner Fragedakis.
I'm not going to say much except to say that I think we have, a few people have identified a problem. I think there actually is a solution, in particular with respect to the second recommendation, which is asking staff to report on the e-bus rollout plan, including details on charging stations and infrastructure requirements, and considers the feasibility of prioritizing the use of e-buses on routes that run on local and collector roads. There's lots of buses that are running on smaller streets throughout our city where homes exist, all kinds of homes. And I think that there's an opportunity, and we're going to find out in item number 27 about the green bus technology that I actually think is actually could be a solution to this current problem. And I think staff can speak to it in item 27. But I think this is a problem with a solution that could be easily sorted out in the not too distant future. So I actually would ask you to support it.
Commissioner DeBearmaker is going to speak, and then after that, Commissioner Heisey.
Certainly, Mr. Chair, I'll be supporting the motion as well. I think this is just another indication of how popular the electric buses are going to be. They don't smell, they don't make noise, they're a beautiful ride. So as we roll them out over the years, because I guess really we're going to get the most over the next 2 years, our first pilot projects, I think they're going to be very popular. So I think this is something for TTC staff to consider is how do you deploy them, I'll call it equitably across the city, and where do you put them where they're most needed? And I'm sure some of our engineers might think, based on the number of kilometers and the steepness of a hill and the closeness to a garage, but there is another factor, which is customer service. So I think this is a very good motion, and it allows our staff to perhaps broaden the parameters of how they make judgments as to where to place these buses and other buses as we march forward with this really amazing electric bus project. Thank you.
Vice Chair Heisey.
I, like you, Mr. Yule, have lived on streets all over the city. I lived on Bedford Road. I've lived on above a store on Yonge Street for several years when I was a young man. And I would say that the experience of a community's expectations on an arterial road are different than they are on a collector or a local road. And I don't think it matters whether the houses are $1 million houses, multi-million-dollar houses, or rooming houses like they were when I was on Bedford Road some 30 years ago. You can't avoid transport trucks on arterial roads in this city. You can't avoid very high levels of traffic. But I think that the communities in this city that have minor streets with our service on them, we should try and consider those locations as early locations for electrification to reflect the kind of community that they travel through. And that's not economics, that's level of busyness, noise, etc. So I don't view this as an NIMBY. I'm disappointed you view it as an NIMBYism initiative. Yeah, but I would also say that, in fact, that the people in South Rosedale have done us a favor raising this issue because it's led to a discussion that might make for a better living environment in quieter communities throughout the city. So I don't think it's bad. I think it's good, and you have to start somewhere. And these people have brought this issue to our attention, and I'm glad they spoke up.
Other speakers? I'll just say I'm a little concerned about the scope of this work, not that we have a concept around electric buses going on residential streets as the first deployment, but if we're looking at all residential streets that buses go on, and we're supposed to conduct community outreach, deployment plans across key routes, it's a big piece of work, and so I guess that's my only concern or caution.
Do you want to put a friendly amendment on that to say as staff deem appropriate, or?
Well, we'll just vote on it. I think it's fine.
No, but how about as part of the garage infrastructure review that's being discussed in the Green Bus Technology Report? Because it is related.
Well, it's also not trying to jump the queue.
Yeah.
No, I'm not worried about jumping the queue. I'm worried about there's a lot of bus routes that run on residential streets, and the community outreach alone, and the expectation that specific types of buses, whether it be a new one versus an old one, electric versus diesel, run on certain routes. The operational logistics, I would think, are immense, and the outreach would be.
I'm just glad we've come such a long way in 12 months.
Yes, true. We're fighting about it.
So why don't we just vote on the item?
Yes.
Okay. All in favor? Opposed? That carries. Item number 27 which is the Green Bus Technology Plan update. Could we have just referred item number 26 to item number 27? Alan Yule is joining us again, and I'll start your time now. You have 5 minutes.
And they are. No. They have them. No. But they are all the companies that are making electric buses. At least some. Well, I know for some of them for sure. They're making electric garbage trucks.
That's amazing.
But
I didn't know that.
But they need rubber bumpers when they're emptying the garbage can because they are, like they bang them.
That's a different. That's not the engine. It's just.
Normally, one is told not to put all your eggs in one basket.
Fair.
I worry that if we spread the buses across 3 bus divisions, we will have 3 different groups of mechanics assessing these buses against their diesel counterparts. We will have 3 different groups of operators assessing these buses against their diesel counterparts. If we have all the new buses in one division, we will have 1 group of mechanics assessing all 3 e-bus designs against their diesel counterparts. We'll also have all three buses being assessed by the operators as well in that one division. The last time we looked at hybrid buses, we wound up with lemons. By looking at all 3 designs for e-buses under one roof, we can more accurately assess how each bus compares to each other and not just their diesel counterparts. If we have access to one set of operator mechanic assessments, we can get the best vehicles possible for the needs of Toronto. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions for the deputy? No? Thank you. So we'll go to question. Oh, sorry. There is a presentation available if commissioners. Yeah? Okay. So we'll move to questions of staff, starting with Vice Chair Heisey.
So one question I had was, the last time we had a discussion about doing this, which is purchasing some electric buses, I raised the question of CNG and keeping that as a possible part of the mix to make sure we had a more robust infrastructure in the event of an extensive power failure, or to give us alternative fuel sources, not just from an environmental point of view, although they looked pretty good on an economic and environmental point of view. Where is CNG in your thought process, if at all? And are you still giving it some consideration as part of a penultimate bus fleet mix in the future?
Through the chair, yes, we are still considering it as part of the ultimate mix in bus technologies. To answer your question as to where we're at with that, we've partnered with Enbridge Gas to evaluate essentially an impact study to garages, stations, and our shops to determine what facility upgrades will be required to go to CNG, as well as the scoping of compressor stations and all the required works to make that happen. And the plan is still to come back at the end of next year in accordance with your motion of November with the results of that evaluation.
Great, thank you.
Commissioner De Laurentiis and Mihevc.
I was trying to do the math in terms of comparative cost between electric bus versus the others. So I wonder if you could, if you can now, that would be helpful. But if not, if you could just in the next report, just do that comparison for us. You know, I note that there's a $15,000 saving, for example, in fuel. But it'd be really interesting to see the complete cost, the total costs of one versus the other.
Yeah, through the chair, through the November report, we did include the relative total life cycle costing by technology, and it showed essentially that the hybrid electric is one of the more expensive, clean diesel next, electric next, and then the cheapest currently is CNG. And it also showed how that changes with PTIF funding. So you could see it kind of with PTIF funding as well as without PTIF funding. As per the report in front of you, you'll see that the latest update to that those numbers shows that the estimate for total life cycle costing on the electric bus has gone down somewhat because we've now received essentially a quote for the hydro required to fuel an electric fleet from Toronto Hydro. They're here in the room to support in case you have questions. But essentially our assumptions were a bit conservative on the fuel cost essentially for electric bus. So the total life cycle cost for electric buses is now estimated to be lower than it was reported in November. But otherwise you would see the numbers you're after in the November report.
Commissioner Mihevc.
I would call that a material change in circumstance. Like we thought that CNG was going to be in the mix because it was cheaper, and now staff are saying with PTIF funding that it's not cheaper, electric is cheaper. So really the choice for us as a commission is, do we go, call it clean diesel, CNG, electric, or do we go clean diesel straight to electric as soon as possible? And you're telling us that the math right now says go straight to electric. Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying that the total life cycle cost for an all-electric future, if you will, is lower than we had estimated back in November. It's still not as low as CNG on its own today.
On its own, but with PTIF funding? All in?
I understand your question. I'd hesitate to suggest that a decision should be made based on with PTIF funding because it won't be available. But nonetheless, with PTIF funding, to answer your question, yes, it would be cheaper and that's partly because of the fact that we couldn't capitalize on the implementation of a compressor station within the PTIF window.
Sorry, not to press you, but are you recommending the logical conclusion that I'm hearing is that we not go for this intermediate technology, CNG, but we go straight from what we have now to electric. Is that your best professional advice? Or should we go down the path of CNG? I think we need a straight answer. You're the professional.
So there was another factor then. So to answer that question, there were two factors really driving, I think, if I understand correctly, the motion around CNG. One was the price and the life cycle cost. The other was fleet resiliency in the event of a protracted power outage. And I think that was the primary driver behind that motion, is my recollection. And at that time, we believed that diesel was reliable and could be you could continue service in a long-term hydro outage because we've got contracts in place to bring diesel in. Natural gas is also reliable because natural gas typically doesn't stop flowing when you have a hydro outage. And we now believe with the architecture that we've developed with, in fact, Toronto Hydro primarily has developed it, but our joint team has developed an architecture that includes backup generation and on-site energy storage that would ensure continuity of service through a long-term outage. So I think that the original primary concern that led to the motion around pursuing CNG can be addressed in any one of those technologies. And so if you take that out of the equation and you also consider that in this short 6 months, the total life cycle cost for electric has reduced, our estimates for it has reduced, and is likely to reduce further as the capital costs go down. If you're asking me that question, then I would say yes, we skip over CNG.
We skip over CNG. So I have a motion that says, in light of the new information presented in this report, that's my read, that the TTC board withdraw its direction on November 13th regarding the requirement for staff to report back on the transition from end-of-life diesel to compressed natural gas. Natural gas will be part of the electric system as the source for a generator to power the electric. All your concerns are addressed.
Yes, and I was going to say that's. I agree that for the backup generator, the best solution, the thinking now is that would be natural gas, but for the propulsion technology, electric, I think, is where our focus should be currently. I don't think we should take the hydrogen fuel cell off the table for a future possibility, or take anything off the table for that matter, if we can, but focus on electric at this point.
Focus on electric. Okay, thank you.
Okay, we'll go to Commissioner Lalonde.
Yeah, just quickly, wasn't part of the thinking as well that we need experience with electric at scale? Like it looks like a very promising technology, but we're not going to commit wholeheartedly to it until we know it works for us.
Absolutely. So right now, the procurement plan that you see in the report has us, with your approval, buying an additional 30 within the PTIF window. And then starting in 2021, we would ramp up procurements of zero emissions buses, whether it's all electric or hydrogen fuel cell. At this point, thinking is all electric. And in the meantime, for the balance of the procurements, that they be hybrid electric, which are reliable and that we can continue to provide service without concern over being an early adopter. And then in 2025, the plan would be to go steady state procurement of that zero emissions technology towards a 2040 target date for a zero emissions fleet. To answer your question, if somehow the electric bus or the infrastructure or anything goes wrong with either the implementation or the technology itself, I'm not suggesting that we put the targets aside so easily, but the reality is we could continue to buy hybrid electric buses until such time that it does prove reliable and that we feel confident to buy them as a solid state of good repair replacement vehicle.
Thank you.
Other questions? Commissioner DeBaremaker.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for a very excellent report. Is my understanding correct that New York City is going down the electric path, and that by I think it's 2025 they will have zero emission vehicles as well?
That's their target. Yes, that's correct.
So they have 8,000 buses.
They have 8,000 buses, and the equivalent in terms of city buses is about 6,000 buses.
So they have 6,000. So they're the largest largest
bus fleet in North America.
Thank you. And we're the third largest.
That's correct.
So if we're both going electric, I would assume that the entire industry is migrating, going towards
second largest is LA, and they are also doing the same.
So the first, second, and third largest fleets in North America are all going electric.
That's correct.
So after 2025, will any of those municipalities buy gas-powered vehicles for their fleet?
If the technology proves as we hope it does, the answer is no.
Right. And I think there is a Paris Accord where actually the cities of Paris, London, Los Angeles, Vancouver have also committed to going electric only or zero emission only by 2025, correct?
That's correct.
So are you confident that, based on what you know today, that the technology for 2025 will be there and will be able to supply and give us what we need?
I'm confident, but I have to say that to the degree that you can be confident this early on, I am confident. There are a lot of unknowns at this point, and I think we need to ask ourselves that question every month between now and 2025. And if the answer is yes all the way along, then yes, that's where we'll be.
Okay, and through you, Mr. Chair, I don't support gas for the buses. In terms of the generators and the emergency backup systems, would you agree that natural gas is the best fuel for the emergency backup or for the powering?
It is certainly the cleanest of the alternatives. There are some constraints that it imposes, given that it's got a large footprint relative to a diesel backup generator. But I think that in the spirit of the direction of the Green Bus Plan, it is the obvious first choice.
Sorry, it's the obvious first choice.
Yes.
And could you understand why there might be some irony that if the TTC were to purchase diesel generators, that we would have dirty diesel generators powering our clean electric fleet? You see, there might be some ironic.
Yes, I mean, the CNG generator would be cleaner than the diesel generator. In either event, they would only be used for emergency backup purposes.
And would be more
regulation.
Would also be more consistent with our Transform TO city stated goals. So if I moved a motion to that effect, that wouldn't hurt or hinder you from buying reliable generators for emergency backup?
No, it shouldn't.
And is that where you think you're going to migrate anyway, or that probably land on that same conclusion
At
anyway?
this time, yes.
Yes? Okay. And through you, Mr. Chair, there are 3 different buses now. There was an article in the LA Times that I will say was critical of BYD, one of the companies, and maybe I'll say some of the lobbyists around that company. I think I flipped it to you when it first came out. Have you had a chance to look at it? And does that concern you in terms of, well, to say first on bus technology, does that concern you? Are you aware of those concerns in the article? Does that make you think that maybe we shouldn't be purchasing for the pilot the BYD buses?
I am aware of the article. It does not give me any hesitation really to buy BYD buses. The article primarily focused on the concerns around lobbying, and I think that in our approach to buy 10 buses from each of 3 manufacturers, we kind of take that out of the equation, and also or even the potential for that, I should say, out of the equation. And the other concerns raised through the article were around production quality, and they were around production quality, and they were primarily focused on the earliest buses that that BYD produced out of their Lancaster plant. They've since gone through a couple of generations of buses, and 1 generation anyway, and so we would expect the quality to have improved since then as well.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions? I just one very quick one. So one of the recommendations in front of us is that we're going to retrofit an existing bus garage, and the cost of that is $18 million.
That's correct. So that retrofit is limited to hopefully the substantial completion of a substation. We don't expect to fully complete the substation within the time remaining under PTIF, but we want to capture as much of the cost as possible. And it also includes the cost of the backup generator at 1 location. And so that would allow for buses procured in 2021 to move into that 1 location. You could ramp up at that 1 location.
But what's the full amount to retrofit a bus garage to make it host electric buses?
The last recommendation there is suggesting essentially that you ask that of us, right? Because we're still working out what the total incremental cost is above, let's say, a hybrid.
It's significantly higher than $18 million.
Oh, yes.
Okay, so I want to make sure that everyone's clear that.
Absolutely, yes.
And so, the question I'm going to ask, because we've already talked about this, but also to kind of touch on what I know Commissioner Mihevc is moving. Are we able to see a business case that's put in front of us that if it costs $80 or $90 million to retrofit an existing garage to make it electric, we know we have capacity issues on garages in general. I kind of want to see the 2. It costs $150 million to build a new garage, $90 million to retrofit an old one. Here's the time it takes to do both. Here's the cost. Here's the business case and the return on investment for each scenario. I don't feel like it can make would you be able to provide that with what's coming so I can make an informed decision on which route is the best to go, or maybe we decide both routes are the ones to pursue?
So we can give best estimates at this point. The fact is that if we're committed to going zero emissions anywhere close to the timelines that were discussed in the November board, then you have to retrofit all of the existing garages anyway. And learning from doing this early work to accommodate just 20 at a garage is proving out a modular and scalable design up to full electrification. And so I would suggest that this would probably be the prudent route to take anyway, given that you need to make the investment at the existing garages anyway. And also the timing of that next garage, well, I would say to your point about doing both, yes. So we've already been talking about with our property group such that they'd be looking for a facility and scoping the upgrades to that facility to make it a zero emissions facility from day one.
But we have 1,000 new buses, like some brand new and some about to come, that are all hybrid or traditional diesel or clean diesel, that all can be expect to be housed in traditional garages, correct?
Correct.
So, and we're going to have those for some of them for 15 to 18 years.
Yes, we will. So we'll continue to be retiring buses over that period of time as well.
But half of our current fleet will be housed in garages as they're kind of structured and constructed now.
Yes.
So then again, why would we not, kind of want to push for a new garage purpose-built as opposed to the retrofit? Or maybe the answer is it's both.
Yeah, I think it is both. I think that the next garage should be purpose-built for that, for a zero emissions fleet, and the timing is probably right. I think that the proving of the ability to retrofit an existing garage and the proving of that architecture, the electrical architecture, should be done now, even if it's just to take lessons learned from it to apply to the next full electric.
But you will give this board, or I guess that's going to be the next board, that comparison of a new purpose-built garage versus a retrofit and what that looks like. Okay, thank you. Speakers, starting with Commissioner Wong, then Heisey, then I think Mihevik has a motion, so we'll go that order.
Yeah, just three brief points. If you want to find out what the cost savings are, the first report that was brought here was from Columbia University that did the analysis on what the savings were. So if you put in fuel costs and life cycle costs, the savings for electric is there. It's not great. It's the greenhouse gases where the big win is. So that's point number one. Point number two, I'm really excited about the electric buses, but we still have to get through a winter. Winter's going to be key, right? Because we don't know how the batteries are going to work through the winter. I'm very hopeful about that, and the technology is evolving very quickly. And the third point is, I'm thinking our costs are going to go down because the current government, or the new government, said they're going to reduce electricity prices by 12%. So we're going to even win. We're going to do even better. So.
And beer.
Buck of beer. That has nothing to do with buses, right? No, that has nothing to.
There's a lot of gas. Beer's related to gas.
Vice Chair Heisey.
So I certainly hope the optimism that's at this table bears out to be true.
Yeah.
And I'm the first guy who'd like to see a perfect world of recyclable batteries and electrical vehicles that don't emit except at power plants where you can control it. But I think you have to take a step back and say, that's a perfect world that's out there. And when I was a kid, I remember they predicted in Popular Mechanics magazine that there would be flying cars. Everyone would have a flying car. Maybe they will. It has not happened yet.
Star Trek had the communicator.
Yes, I know. That's right. So all I would say is I don't think we should decide yet. I think we're going to have a mixed fleet for quite a long time. And intentions by other public sector bodies as to what they'd like to do are different than what they're capable of doing and what happens. And I would urge the board to not yet decide what the bus fleet is going to be. It may be diesel hybrid, it may be clean diesel, it may be CNG. I think it's too early to say what that mix is. And this idea of power plants at generators, small power plants at each of the bus garages, guaranteeing an electrical supply, that's a pretty interesting idea. I want to see it developed better before I understand whether I should say no to CNG, no to clean diesel. And so I think that it's great what we're doing, but I don't think we should make any precipitous decisions about the future because we don't have enough information. That's my opinion.
Commissioner Mihevik.
Well, I'm going to take a slightly different tact. Maybe 1 and 2 are not controversial. Recognizing, get on with the 9th garage as soon as possible. And I hear staff is coming with a report. on that next month, so I look forward to that. But I think it's just a way of us affirming that we want to get on with bus purchases. It's an unloved but very important part of the transit mix in Toronto, the bus system. And you know, we're breaking at the seams even after we do the 8th garage. So we've got to get on with the 9th garage. Staff is working on it. We'll get an update on it, but this is basically to keep the pressure up on that. Second one, we've already done this, but to confirm that by 2025, the goal, there might be something that happens in between now and 2025, like a winter or two, but that our goal is that after 2025, absolutely no buses be purchased that aren't zero emissions propulsion technology and fossil-free technology. So that's the green fleet plan. The third one, we had given, maybe this is the controversial one, we had given staff the direction several months ago to also look at CNG. However, in staff's response, very clearly and unambiguously, their analysis is that CNG is not really necessary given the hybrid option, and given that it makes sense for us to focus on the going direct to electric as soon as possible. So the CNG will be part of the mix, but it will be the energy source to the backup generators in our bus garages. It will not be the one thing powering our vehicles. That's a distraction at this point, and an unnecessary one, given that it is cheaper at the end of the day to go electric. And there was a second point around the there was another thing with CNG that I can't remember now that staff mentioned in their presentation. So that's why I'm putting that forward.
Okay, thank you. Any questions of the mover? No. Commissioner DeBaremaker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just going to move a motion that the TTC use the lowest emission fuel to power any backup generator at TTC garages. I think in my questioning of staff, they gave a philosophical agreement that they're probably going to land here anyway. And that this is consistent with all the motions that our City Council has passed. I think there's an ironic twist to power a clean fleet of buses with diesel generators. I think that the natural gas generators are better. I think they have lower emissions, and I think it's the way of the future. And through you, Mr. Chair, I'd certainly like to thank staff for giving us this supplementary report. It is interesting to see how fast the technology is changing. We were about a year ago debating whether our electric hybrid buses were lemons. There was the old I'll call it urban legend that we were early adopters in hybrid vehicles, and I think many of us, certainly I had been under the impression that people were very unhappy with them. It was when our current CEO and our former CEO, Andy Byford, said to us in front of the full commission, actually, there were some hiccups, and once we sat down with the manufacturers and the suppliers and gotten things straightened out, they're running basically the same as all the other buses in our fleet. So we were early adopters on many things, and I think this is another thing that we can be very proud of. You know, I just looked at a Bloomberg report a little while ago that said there are 380,000 electric buses in use today. 386,000. So it's not as though the technology is that new and we don't really have that many performances. That report estimates that there's going to be 1.2 million of them by 2025. And when you look at places like New York City, ourselves in Los Angeles, where all the large cities with the large bus fleets are all going in the same direction. So while I was somewhat impatient because I see there's still some in 2021, 22, 23, 24, there's still some hybrids being purchased. So I agree maybe that we're going to have a mixed fleet for a while, because when you buy a bus in 2024, it's going to be around for a while. But I think the move towards emissions-free buses, I think, is irreversible. I think it bodes well for us that we're sending signals to the market, because if I was in the business of selling electric buses or any buses, I'd be looking at our report, New York's report, Los Angeles's report, and say, and I'm still building diesel because I would throw it out. I would get into the electronic bus business, and you know, us sending out these signals, even though we're not going emissions-free or zero emissions till 2025, does give industry the time to adapt, to anticipate, to compete with their competitors, to see if we can get the lowest price possible. And I think it's a wonderful thing. And like the motion we had a little earlier today, I think there will be jockeying for position when these buses show up. Not just the first 10 or 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 or 60. As they roll out in a few years, there will be resident groups in every corner of the city banging on their councillor's door saying, don't give us the shabby old bus. We want the electric bus because it's quiet and it doesn't make the noise that our current diesel buses make. It doesn't have the black waft of smoke coming out the back. There's so many, it's certainly a better ride than the existing diesel buses. So when I look at all the benefits of them, I'm glad our staff have put this report together. And as much as I would be tempted to move an acceleration of some of those last purchases to migrate them away from hybrids and over to all electric, at this point, I'm happy that the staff have certainly made that intention clear. And maybe in 2 years, our staff will come back to us and say, you know what? New York's now got X thousand buses and we love them, and there is no use to have hybrid anymore because the technology is proven. And so maybe it's better to go, I'll call it I don't want to call it baby steps, but incrementally towards the goal that we want. So I think this is a revolutionary change. I think it's very good for our city, but we're doing the revolution in baby steps, and I guess I'll have to wait till 2025 to see all those zero emission vehicles. So Mr. Chair, I just want to thank staff for a very thorough report. Very well put together report, giving us all the numbers so that we as a board can do our due diligence. And I'll support certainly all of Councillor Mahevik's motions as well, because I think when the whole world is going electric, for us to invest the extra money into additional monies into natural gas, which will be extinct very shortly in the bus field, I think is probably not a good use of our money. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for the mover of this motion? No? Okay, let's start voting. So Mahevik's was placed first. Are people okay to vote vote on that all together, or do they want to separate items out? Okay, so we'll vote out. Let's just vote it one at a time then. So item number 1, all in favor? That carries. Oh, sorry, opposed? That carries. Item number 2, TDC confirm its target for procurement of only zero emissions propulsion technology starting 2025 and define zero emissions propulsion technology as fossil fuel free. All in favor? That carries. Item number 3, this is the CNG one. I don't think I have to read it. All those in favor of Councillor Mahevik's motion? 1, 2, 3. Opposed? That one does not carry. So 1 and 2 carried. Then we move to Commissioner de Beermakers. Okay, this is, as you can read, the lowest emission fuel to power any backup generator at TTC garages. All in favor? Opposed? That doesn't carry. Okay, there were recommendations in front of us that I will, no, it didn't. I will, do we have to move them?
Not supported. Why don't we want to support?
Okay, so I'm moving the staff recommendations. All those in favor? Any opposed? No, you're in favor? Yeah. Staff, yeah.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, no opposed, that carries. A motion to adjourn from Commissioner Lalonde.
Oh, done.
All those in favor? I won't ask for a recorded vote this time, but you know who's here. Thank you, everyone.